He's gonna be late.
Okay. We'll be there about 4.
Oh, it is after 4. Let's go.
All right, let's do it.
Let's call the work session to order. We're 01. I'm gonna start by taking the roll.
Mortensen, absent. Aronson.
Here.
Burley.
Here.
Held, absent. Incan.
Here.
Palenko.
Here.
Scripsek, Adrian.
Here.
Thank you.
Agenda. Alright. First agenda item on the work session, High Country Conservation Center, HC3. Welcome. You guys just running with it?
Hillary's gonna introduce us. There she is.
Hello.
Oh, Hillary, it's all yours.
Hi, everyone. Thanks for being here. I'm sorry I can't be there with you all in person. I am at the Summit for Recycling down in beautiful Aurora. But I appreciate you all being there tonight. So we are just here to hear about all of the wonderful things that HC3 has been doing over the past year. I know I certainly couldn't do my job as well as I do without them, so thanks so much. And yeah, now I will hand it over to Jess and Jen. Take it away.
Awesome. Thanks, Hillary. I think I know most of you all, but I know there's a couple of you new to council since last time I presented. I'm Jen Shank with the High Country Conservation Center. Thank you so much for having us and for your leadership and support of HC3. So like Hillary said, this mostly just serves as an annual update. In your packet, we did put in basically our results from 2021 for the programs that you fund, which are primarily the programs that Jess Hoover, our Climate Action Director, is going to talk about next. But before we talked about those energy and climate programs and our business program, I did want to talk for a minute about zero waste initiatives and recycling. So a couple different things. We're going to go back to 2021 for that. You all do give grant HC3 $5,000. You did in 2021 and again in 2022. Thank you very much through the grant program. That $5,000 the past 2 years has supported recycling initiatives that benefit Frisco residents and businesses, as well as a Tame the Tap water conservation program. I don't believe we have a slide about water conservation, but we go into homes and we do water assessments for individuals, residents in Frisco. We do about 10 assessments a year, and we have hit those goals both last year and this year. We've already completed our 10 Tame the Tap assessments. So this presentation will just focus on waste diversion. So you all can read what we've been doing in Frisco. We've had a number of recycling events in Frisco, and my colleagues have told me that we have hit the elementary school and Frisco Fun Club enough times now that they actually know us and they're super excited, and they know they can answer recycling questions and composting questions. So it's really fun. It's great to see all the young kids engage in our programs. You can also see that we've worked locally with 6 businesses last year, and about 400 residents are enrolled in our free food scrap drop-off program. That is a pretty big proportion of the county. We have about 2,000 total residents enrolled in that program. So now I'm going to talk more generally, kind of community-wide, where we are in 2022. So you can see right here what I just was talking about. We have just over 2,000 residents enrolled in our free food scrap drop-off program. We have 4 locations, sorry, that we've had for a while. The 3 recycling sites, so Frisco, Breck, Silverthorne. And then last year we added one over at Lord of the Mountains in Dillon. And then just this year like a month ago, we added one over by the Wellington neighborhood in Breck. So really excited to just make it easier for people to recycle food and glass. We also have a number of glass drop-offs in Frisco. Besides the recycling site, we have one over at Whole Foods. And then you can see some other things that we've done. We try to give compost away each year to anyone who's enrolled in the free food scrap drop-off program. In terms of marketing, and I thought I'm going to try to play this. But yeah, we've done a lot of focus on plastics and food scraps. And you can see from the bullets, that has been really effective. So we've had a lot of phone calls, a lot of web traffic to those pages, and we've doubled the food scrap enrollments during the period when we've been running that very site-specific marketing. I should also mention that mostly all these initiatives, except for your funding, some town of Breck funding, and some state funding, most of this is coming from that strong future funding that we're getting from Summit County governments, the mill levy property tax that was passed back in 2018. So let me see if I can just play this. We'll see if we have sound. That's okay. So these are just the short little videos. It does just have a little song music track behind it, but not super important. These are, I think, our 15 seconds that are playing on social media, or that we're playing in 20. Oh, now I'm not smart enough to move forward. Okay. And then these are the ads that we're running as part of our campaign. So let me play this one. Again, it won't have sound, I don't think, but no big deal. So pretty straightforward, but again, super effective marketing. Another thing that we've been doing with Strong Future Funding is some of y'all may have gotten these on your recycling bins if you have curbside recycling. So these are called OOPS tags, and we've been doing this program for a couple of years. So on one side, it literally says oops. So perhaps if there's a plastic bag in your recycling, then we'll just circle on here like, oops, you shouldn't be doing plastic bags. We could even write a little note if we find something like less strawberry clamshells, whatever it is, write a personalized note, but it's pretty friendly, you know, oops, leave these items out of your recycling. And then on the other side, super encouraging also, like, recycle more of these. So anything you're doing positively, we're like, hey, great, recycle more of these things, milk jugs, whatever it is. And you know what? We're putting these on bins, whether or not somebody is doing a horrible job or whether they're doing a great job. So we've definitely had people give us a call or say like, hey, did you guys put this on my recycling bin? Like, I got a gold star. So super successful. We do actually measure the results. We go in July and then we go again in September. And we try to hit the same houses. This doesn't always work because of waste management and timberline route changes and our staffing and intern help. But that's our goal. So when we've done that, we've noticed when we're just like peeking in the recycling bin, we've seen a 40% increase in a 40% improvement, just kind of based on our site. Like, wow, this house did better than last time. So 40% of the households that we're hitting have done better from time to time, from July to September. And then again, okay, so then what's upcoming this year, next year? Pay-as-you-throw implementation is really, really high on our agenda. We have met with Dawn and Hillary. We've also met with Breck staff recently. And so at this moment in time, it may just be Frisco and Breck implementing pay-as-you-throw next year. The Board of County Commissioners is still trying to decide what they are doing and whether or not they're going to consider adoption this year. So I haven't gotten the final word. You all may have more information on that than me, but we are in continued conversations with them. We're super excited to get this going in Breck and Frisco. I absolutely think that that's a critical mass. And so Jesse, Hillary, and I, and my staff are working on an implementation plan for next year. The funding and everything we need to do. HC3 is also just about ready to hire a marketing agency to work on an advertising campaign related to pay-as-you-throw implementation. And that's money that was already approved in the Strong Future budget for 2022. So that is happening. We're going to have a really comprehensive marketing and outreach plan starting at the beginning of 2023 to get residents and businesses educated on what they need to be doing. The residential deadline, the pay-as-you-throw component is certainly the most important, simply because that deadline is going to come up first. Businesses and homeowners associations will have until June of 2025 to come into compliance. So we will absolutely be helping folks. We are already helping them. But that one, I think the deadline is a little bit farther out, so we will have more time on the outreach and education for that. Another super exciting project that we are just embarking on is construction and demolition, which we call C&D, recycling and recovery. So we just hired a consultant. We are in the process. We just kicked this off 2 weeks ago. We are creating a 5-year construction and demolition recovery and recycling plan. And by the way, when I say we are doing this on behalf of Summit County government and the scrap staff. So those are the major waste reduction projects that we have coming up. And then with that, I don't want to take any more of Jess's time. So I'm going to hand it over to Jess to talk climate, unless you all have questions for me.
Jess, do you want the presentation to stay up or?
Yes, please.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay. Well, hi, everybody. So similar to Jen, there's a few of you who are new to me as in your roles on council. So I am Jess Hoover. I'm the Climate Action Director for the High Country Conservation Center, and it is nice to meet. I met Lisa through work. Nice to meet you and Elizabeth, and hi, Andy and Jesse. I also want to introduce, we have some new staff on my team, and I'm really excited that they're both here joining me tonight. So in the audience, we have Taylor Magnus, who is HC3's new Energy Operations Manager. He started in the spring. He is doing our home energy assessments. He's our residential energy efficiency expert, and he is also getting up to speed on the building code and the HERS rating system that is part of our local building codes. And then I also have Narelle Kipple. She is our Climate Action Manager. She leads our sustainable business program, supports me, and supports the Energy Smart Colorado residential energy efficiency program. So happy to have both of them on my team. Couldn't do everything that we do without them. So without further ado, we're going to talk about our accomplishments in 2021, what we've been working on in 2022. So with respect to climate action, in our Solarize Summit program, this has been one of the most successful programs that we started as a result of putting together our countywide climate action plan. And we had 10 Frisco residents participate last year. And between 2019, when the program first started, and 2021, we've had 30 participants in town of Frisco. If I add in this year, we're up to 37. So 37 Frisco residents have installed solar through this program, which is really wonderful and impressive. It's a total of nerdy energy things, 223 kilowatts of solar power, which if you've ever been to one of the solar gardens in Breckenridge, it's about half the size of one of those. So we've put half of a solar garden on rooftops in the town of Frisco in the past 4 years, which is pretty incredible. I'm really proud of that program. Really thank the town of Frisco for continuing to support it with rebates for local residents, because we know that it makes a huge difference for people to afford the systems and move forward. As far as electric vehicles go, we hosted an electric vehicle ride and drive event last year at the Adventure Park with over 100 folks attending. And it was really exciting because it was the first time we actually had cars available for people to test drive. So we had a number of folks test drive the vehicles, leave. We're hosting another one also at the Adventure Park. So thank you again at the end of September. And someone commented on our social media post today that she was so thrilled we were doing it again because it was a huge help for them moving forward in their own EV purchasing decision. I don't know, Andy, if you will remember this, but I had a major foot in mouth moment last year at Council Update when I was talking about another EV project we were working on, and I mixed up two very important Jerry's, but we're doing a series of EV videos, and we got grant funding from Freeport-McMoRan, and also some of our climate funding went to this too. And so we are producing a series of 4 videos with local EV drivers, 3 local EV drivers and 1 local EV or e-biker, sort of myth busting what it's like to drive an electric vehicle in the mountains. We shot those at the end of July, and we are going to be releasing 1 a week starting at the end of next week to lead up to our ride and drive event in September. The inspiration was comedians in cars getting coffee. It has sort of veered away from the coffee aspect, but they're really fun. I'm really excited to put them out in the community and just bust some common myths about EVs, like, is it scary to charge them? What's the performance like? And even, can I take them on a road trip? And so those are the theme of some of the videos. We will be sure to share them with staff, and we're really hoping that we get the whole Climate Action Collaborative helping us to spread these out and really get great participation at our EV event again this year. We also hosted, in partnership with Protect Our Winners, a film event last year at the Riverwalk Center in Breckenridge. We had over 500 people attend. Jeremy Jones, who is a professional snowboarder and the founder of POW, was actually able to squeeze it into his schedule. So he was there. We did a live Q&A on stage. It was really great. And we attracted a bunch of people that are usually beyond our regular constituency. And then finally, we have last year and through this year been continuing to work on our renewable energy mitigation program, which is a program that would require large commercial developments to offset their outdoor energy use in the form of very large snowmelt systems or outdoor heated pools and spas. They need to offset that on site with solar power. We are continuing to push that forward and hope that we might be able to, I don't know when we're going to bring it to Town of Frisco. We'll be bringing it up in Breckenridge later this fall. So that it's something that is to be continued, and we will certainly revisit with you in the future. All righty. Not on this slide, but something else I wanted to mention, and I think it is on this slide, is our builder workshops. We've been continuing to host workshops for the local building community about building science so that everybody feels up to date on the codes, comfortable with what's required, and introducing them to some new concepts and just really continuing to support the building community through the most effective techniques for energy efficient building. So I covered some of this already. I'm going to skip down to the bottom. First, one thing that's really exciting for this year is we applied for and received a grant from the EPA to do a climate equity plan for the whole community. And we felt like this was really important because our initial climate action plan didn't specifically call out equity concerns. And we wanted to make sure that everybody in the Summit County community is able to participate in programs that not only benefit their quality of life, but also reduce greenhouse gas emissions. So we have our very first steering committee meeting next week. Really excited, and we'll keep you updated on how that progresses as the planning process moves forward. We will be doing a lot of community outreach later this winter and into next spring as well, including listening sessions in both English and Spanish, community surveys in English and Spanish, and we're also doing a photography project with local youth to engage them in climate action as well. Okay, so another big project that we wrapped up last year was, well, part of this year too, due to some data delays, a greenhouse gas emissions inventory update. So when we did our original climate action plan, the committee agreed that we were going to update our emissions inventory every 3 years. And so even though 2020 was kind of weird and wonky, we decided we were going to stick to that schedule. And I apologize that now I'm seeing this on a big screen. That yellow is really hard to read. It's transportation. These are Frisco's greenhouse gas emissions. So not a ton of changes between 2017 and 2020 in terms of how our emissions are broken down by sector. The really big pieces of the pie, of course, are energy use and transportation. So you've got energy use in commercial buildings, that's the brighter green, and then the blue is residential energy use. The yellow is transportation, and this is just within Frisco town limits. If you look at our energy use and combine them, it's about 2/3 of our emissions are coming from energy use in buildings. That's really similar to our county-wide emissions profile, where energy use in buildings is about 60%. And then transportation is another 1/3. Okay, so how do we decrease emissions from buildings? Well, one of HC3's key ways of doing this is promoting energy efficiency in our community. And we do this through our Energy Smart Colorado program. This is our residential energy efficiency program where, with funding support from our municipalities like Town of Frisco, we're able to subsidize homeowners to get energy audits, we're renters too. They get a home energy audit. They get a very comprehensive report that says, okay, here's how your home could perform better. And then we also provide incentives to help them move forward with these projects. And thanks to all of you, we had bigger rebate funding this year to start offering to people so that we can really help folks, especially our middle income earners, move forward with some projects that might be a little bit more expensive for them, especially after COVID. So last year, it was a bang up year. We did 40 assessments across the town of Frisco. We completed 12 projects, and those projects resulted in an average savings of $340, $343 per household. So we're really excited about that. This year, we are nearly at our Frisco assessment goal with 22 assessments completed, almost at that project goal. We've got 7 out of 10 done. And we're also really excited because we've been collaborating really well this year with Xcel Energy. And one of the new things that we're doing this year is when our auditors are in a house, they're able to fill out a spreadsheet that gets sent directly to Xcel. And it's kind of Xcel puts together a goodie box of things that homeowner or renter might need, so they can get LED light bulbs or faucet aerators to save water or some other energy efficiency items. And so we can do that, send that information directly to Xcel, and then Xcel sends the box to the homeowner. So we're really excited that we're working more closely with Xcel too to better serve the community. On the business side, we still run our Resource-Wise Sustainable Business Program. We were really excited to work with Lisa and NextPage this year. So she's got a firsthand perspective of what it's like. And in this program, we go out and we provide sustainability and energy assessments to local businesses to help them improve the sustainability of their operations. So last year, again, had a really great year. We've worked with 9 businesses to get them in the program, coached 5 of them through projects that saw an annual savings of $820 per business, which is really great for those businesses. This year, we are almost at our enrollment goal. I was just chatting with Narelle today where the projects are really at 3 out of 6 right now. Again, a new program or a new collaboration for us this year is we are working more closely with Xcel Energy to have them come up and do the energy assessments, and then they can work more closely with the businesses and getting them involved in Xcel programs that are specifically tailored for each business. So for example, NextPage got a ton of new LED lighting all for free from Xcel. And that's thanks to, HC3 being able to provide those resources and being the local expert on the ground that can connect the businesses to the services that are available to them. All right, and that does it for me. So we have some time left. So if you have any questions for either me or Jen, I'm sure we would love to answer them. Hey, Andy, you can watch the recording on Zoom.
We should note that Andy Held did come in.
Yes, thank you.
Throw one out there. Just, I hate to say unrelated to what you've presented, because what you've presented is great. This is the day for water to shine, meaning it's raining here and everybody downriver is getting scared. Is it your best crystal ball of, does all the downriver Colorado River challenges, is it presenting opportunities for you to motivate us as the local people to do something different with our water? Or should we be scared from what's going on downstream? Is that going to start to impact us up here? What are you hearing?
Shank, answer that question.
Yes.
Unfortunately, Rachel's not here because she's also at Recycle Colorado, but she is working on developing a whole really comprehensive water conservation program that Jen could probably talk about better than I.
Yeah, I mean, the entire state of Colorado is still in a drought. So even if our tiny little basin has a good snow year and water year, we should be very concerned. I mean, it's certainly climate change and water in the West are probably the 2 primary. Yes.
And a lot of it's prompted by the lower basin is so in the news right now.
Yes.
Arizona cutting
Yeah.
21%.
Right.
Well, it's coming from here. I didn't know if we're hearing rumblings of what we need to be doing.
The basin states, sorry, Jen.
Yeah, go ahead.
Jesse chime in too, but all of the basin states, it's the Bureau of Reclamation. And so they're telling the upper basin states and the lower basin states to work together to figure out there's a certain amount that the Bureau of Rec is telling them, like all of there's 7 basin states, to cut back. And they're basically saying, okay, the upper states and the lower states, you work together to negotiate how you are going to achieve these cutbacks. We missed that deadline. So this is what's been in the news. So they've recently extended it. They haven't set a hard and fast deadline. So it will very likely impact us in Colorado, even as an upper basin state, because of what we send down and are obligated to send downriver. What's going to come out of it, I can't tell you, because the compact is inherently flawed. So, but I agree with Jen. I mean, I checked the USGS has a drought monitor, so you can check it, and we are in fact still in a drought despite all the rain. I do okay, Jesse?
Yeah.
Oh God.
Thinking back to a report that says, we haven't been in a fire ban in 9 weeks, so we're almost out of a drought. And those two things are not related. It was just, yeah, not great. Not great news.
As expected.
Maybe we should have Brad Udall come back and do another talk about water.
It's complicated, that we know. Okay. Thank you for everything you guys do.
All of you, we really appreciate your continued support.
Appreciated what you do. Okay. Next up is agenda item number 2, Building Hope FERC Soul Center Capital Campaign Update. Welcome, welcome.
It must be nonprofit night.
Hold up on the screen. That would be fun. I can do that for you.
You guys are awesome. Thank you. May I get in there?
Oh, yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Thank you.
Let us step aside. Give me just a second.
In the interlude, while most everybody knows me, or they know that I'm not Hunter. Hunter's,
Here you go.
I don't know where he is, but he's not available. And Rick is online, our Mayor Pro Tem is online, but he's in and out. So they threw the gavel at me and I caught it. So here I am.
Well, you
So-
thankfully learned good hands from meeting running. So
As,
For the presentation to be up, let me know and I will put it up.
we
think we're
we're ready.
Yeah.
Ready to
Gotcha.
go. I'll start out. I'm Jennifer McAtamney. I'm with Building Hope, and this is the amazing Brianne Snow from FERC. If you don't know, through the last couple of years, this woman has held our community together
Wow.
by the tips of her fingers. The work that they have done has been extraordinary, and I don't know if you've had the chance to meet her, but she's an incredible human being, and what the effort that they have led to keep our workforce fed and housed over the last couple of years was an absolutely extraordinary effort. And it couldn't be done without the support of the towns and the county, because it all takes money too. So, and we're here today to talk to you about the Soul Center, which is a longtime dream of Brianne and I's. And so I'll let her start telling you a little bit about it.
Yeah, and I guess I need to plug Building Hope because she forgot about how many people Building Hope helped through the pandemic. We were a pretty great team, I would say, because our community, as you all know, really suffered through the pandemic. So we're glad to be up here together. I don't know how to make this be full screen.
And
so
one thing
forgive
we'll
me.
tell you is we're not going to read these slides to you.
Yeah.
So we're going to try to we know you got them in your packet, so you had a chance to digest all that. And I know when I've sat in that seat, there's nothing worse than slide reading. So
Yeah, I want to give you guys some stats that might not be on this presentation just to really further drive this home, to talk about just why we're here. Building Hope and FERC has had space issues for pretty much our entire existence. FERC has been shuffled around just in my time there. We've been in 5 different buildings. We've expanded, we've moved, we've packed up shop, we've moved again. Really pretty difficult. And Building Hope has been just trying to make it work as well. As you guys know, space is a premium. And so we spend a lot of money doing the services that we do. We run out of 5 buildings among the 2 of us, and it puts a lot of pressure on our clients. We share a lot of mutual clients, a lot of folks that need mental health help actually also need basic needs. And so we make them go back and forth quite a bit, not because we want to, but because that's how we're situated. So when this opportunity presented itself, we were just kind of still in the pandemic and thinking, ooh, okay, this is a really amazing opportunity and there's a lot of community support behind it. let's go ahead and try this out because we really need space and our clients are also really suffering. So it's kind of how this came about, just to give you some backgrounds. In terms of need though, we have 30% of Summit County residents accessed our services last year, which is
1 in 3.
phenomenal. I mean, like that's a big number. And so we're serving a lot of people, 8,500 appointments last year we're all short staffed like everybody else in the community. And so just really trying to hold it together and make sure that we're meeting those needs. This summer, we're seeing that food market visits are up 3 times the level since before the pandemic, which is pretty shocking if you think about it. And I've thought about it.
You've lifted the groceries.
I've lifted them, I've packed them. And what people are saying is it's really hard to live here, much harder than it was pre-pandemic. They've exhausted their savings, and with inflation, gas prices, food prices going up, and then oftentimes both of our clients have had their homes that they've rented for years and years be sold, and them have to move into more expensive, smaller homes if they have that option. Some of our clients have moved into their vehicles or hotels or a wide variety of different situations that are not ideal for them or their children. About 90% of our clients at FERC earn less than the self-sufficiency standard for the community that we live in, meaning they can't make ends meet by what they make. So they do need a little extra support to be able to live and work here. And I think it's really important we all have at least frequented locations that don't have enough staff, let alone try to run them. And so anything we can do to keep the workforce here is really important to Jen and I, and that really comes down to supporting them. And they're facing all kinds of needs. 60% of our clients don't have the childcare that they need in order to go to work and be at work and feel safe at work, that their kids are being taken care of. And then 1 in 4, 25% of our clients say that they have poor mental health. So this isn't even, we're not a mental health agency, and we do some sort of navigation services and have some peer support. That's a pretty high number for the amount of people coming, and those are the people that are willing to tell us.
I was just going to say, yeah, because it's a hard thing to say when to say that I'm struggling.
Yeah. So I guess just understanding that there is a need here, and for us to join forces and go into a similar building and have our clients be able to come and access those services under one roof, where I can walk down a client that is having a mental health crisis down the hall to get the services that they need, and vice versa, is really important to us. And so we're really excited about this endeavor.
Not to mention the fact that in this amazing building, first of all, it is on the bus line. It's as you come into Breckenridge where the new water plant is. They are over there. There's a project called Alta Verde. It is a low income tax credit project. So that will be all rentals. And we will be just adjacent to that right on the bus line. And what we found, a lot of people said, why would you go over to Breckenridge? You guys are over in Silverthorne. You have a little place in Breck. Why would you move there? Well, what we found from talking to clients, and Brianne actually did some really, before we even, this was months ago, did some really intense surveying of clients. And we found that 2/3 of the people either live or work in the lower Blue Basin. I'm sorry, in the upper Blue Basin. And so that means people either they are working there or they have a family member there. So in terms of a location, really well set up, especially because we're right on the bus line and next to not only this new project of the 250 houses, but that they're doing, but all the units that are on Airport Road that have already built and are also planned. So this will truly be a haven of locals in that area. And by coming together in one space, we'll really be able to serve people in a more efficient way, right? We're right now, Building Hope serves people all over the community. And I think one of the things that's so interesting about this partnership is while many people who are accessing, I'm guessing most of you have probably not accessed services at FERC, maybe insurance navigation. I know a lot of people have used them to learn more about how to get engaged into the individual market, but many people don't go to the food market or actually probably all of us go to the thrift store somewhere along the way when it's open. And but building hope and mental health crosses all boundaries. I mean, it doesn't matter how much money you make. It doesn't matter what your family looks like. It doesn't matter what country you're from. It doesn't matter who your grandparents are. Mental health impacts all of us. And so this truly, by coming together, this will be a space that will be accessible and available to everyone in the community. And many people will find opportunities to come there for one reason or another. And so it's also so wonderful because now we'll have an 18,000 square foot building that was built to be a food market, that was built to be a thrift store and take in and sort that stuff, as opposed to having to, back yourself in and try to have spaces that really weren't developed to do that, to be able to do this kind of stuff. We will have offices, so therapists in the community. We do this at Building Hope now, and FERC has done this for years, but we'll have therapists that could be on site using offices and private spaces there to see clients. We will be able to have mental health navigation. We will have peers and food and all the things that people need. When people are experiencing a mental health crisis, what we find all the time is, right, it's not just that they're anxious. When you're anxious and that is becoming all consuming, other pieces of your life kind of start to fall apart at the same time. And so being able to provide those kind of wrap services, make sure that someone, hey, let's take a look at this insurance products that might be here. Here, look, there's a Peak Health Alliance product that you can have as many behavioral health visits in a year as you want, and there's not even a copay. So that's the kind of things and magic that can happen when we are in a space together and we're there in a place we can serve the community.
Yeah, so this is just a slide of just what the building will look like, and I hope that you can see it better than what I can see. But ultimately, this is going to save us about almost $200,000 a year in operating costs if we can raise the money for this building. So where does that money go? It goes back to clients. That's what we ultimately want. I don't know, you're leasing. We own some of our buildings, and they are old. And we spend a lot of money making sure that people can walk in them and the ceiling doesn't fall down on top of them. And so just keeping, the buildings open and operational and running, we are just so relieved at the money that we'll save by actually building a building that works for what we want it to work for. It's going to be 18,000 square feet of space that's solely dedicated to folks that need help. It's going to be warm, inviting. It's called the Soul Center, which is important to us because there is that Spanish-English, those Spanish and English meanings. But what we really want is a warm, welcoming, inviting space that feels really inclusive to anybody that is going in there, that stigma is gone and that people can access services that they need and really feel like the community supports them. And so they in turn can stay in this community and work in this community. I think that's really important.
Yeah, be part of our community so that when we have awesome concerts in the park, right, that people show up, that our lights don't turn off at 4 o'clock like they do in Vail. And so keeping our workforce here and making sure that they have the support that they need, because we're not going to fix, Brianna and I, we are not going to fix the economy. We're probably not going to fix the wage problem. But what we can do is we can fix things like making sure that there's a therapist when you need it, making sure that you have access to healthy food when your family needs it and you're down on your luck. And one of the things I think reason we all live here is because it's a community that care and take care of each other. And this is just the ultimate example of it. One thing, see the new slide up there, is we are really excited to share that while we only began this fundraising campaign a couple of months ago, we are almost 75% of the way there, which is just really demonstrates the enthusiasm and the support the project has. We've got incredible donations from our boards, incredible donation from the Dudek family of $1 million, which really helped push that number along. And we're really looking for full participation from all of our towns and the county. And FERC will be bringing their buildings to the table to sell. So
yeah, we think it's really important to have full buy-in from our own boards and from our own, putting what we can into this, because it really makes a lot of sense. We're really lucky to own some of our buildings and to be able to sell them during a pretty good market, to be able to put that money back into this new location, because we feel like this is going to make a big difference. We're also working really closely with the town of Silverthorne to ensure that there is a food market over on that side of the community, because that is one of the things that is a little bit hard to go to a different community. So we at FERC have always liked to have two separate food markets. But other than that, this building will be kind of the prime spot for all of the action. And people can access our appointments, both of ours, by phone, by computer, or in person. And there's a wide variety of preferences. And so that's when I say we want it to be inclusive. We want people to be able to get what they need, how they need it. And food is that only variable, because we can't give it to you over the computer. And so just making sure that that is known in this, it's really important. Jen mentioned that we surveyed our clients before I would say yes to this project. I wanted to make sure that the clients themselves wanted this. It's one thing for us to think that this is a need, but it's another thing to get the voices of the people that are already utilizing the services and how would this make life better for them. And they were very, very, very excited by the prospect of having all of this in one space. They liked the area. And that's, you know, again, that 2/3 of people having a family member that works or lives in Breckenridge was showing us that people are going to that area of the community to work or to go home. And so, but one of the things that they said, this will only work if you have a food market on Silverthorne Dillon side. And so we're definitely making sure that we're listening to the voices of the clients. I think that that's important to both Jen and I.
Yeah, and that fundraising total is inclusive of that space as well.
Right. This is the timeline. I think that the most important thing for us is that it's begun. We are in it to win it. And we're going to go ahead and break some ground next month. And we're really, really excited. And we feel like that's going to really be kind of our opening to talk to the community about a lot of what's going on. And so that's ultimately why we're here and going to talk to all the various towns and county, because we really want to show up to that groundbreaking and say that all of the towns in our community feel like this is an important project and they've supported it in this way. And so we're coming here today to ask for financial support in terms of getting this building built so that the end result is more money going back into the community for the folks that live and work in Frisco as well.
So that is what we've got for you today, but we are now ready for questions or curiosities that you might have about the project. I just want to say, it's a beautiful building that Suzanne Allen Guerra not only designed, but did that pro bono. And so right there, that was a tremendous amount in terms of costs. You know, you guys being on town council, you have an idea of what that is. And so when you have people like that in the community who are so talented and willing to give themselves to not only give their time and effort, but to give the community and a place of serving the community that will be a beautiful, welcoming space by a talented architect, just really shows to me the dedication.
And built by Rockridge, an amazing builder in our community. DJ is giving his support and building it at a cost. And so again, with that community buy-in, we're able to leverage that support to show people that this is important to the people that live here.
Even our realtor is donating their fees for selling the buildings. So yeah. Questions? You got it. You guys got to ask us something.
Water.
Not about water, although I have some thoughts.
I'll ask an energy question.
Yeah.
So Suzanne, you know, she's known to be a sustainable, forward-thinking architect, and likewise Rockridge Builders. What are the, you know, there's a baseline code here that you guys have to meet, but are you planning to exceed that in terms of, you know, utility affordability for your clients? I mean, what is that? You know, how far is this building going to go to make sure that its longevity and affordability in the long term is there?
Yeah, great question. I think it's really important. We have Barbara Gibbs over there, who is a board member of FERC, and Johanna Gibbs, who is helping us with this campaign. But Barbara is just one of our whole entire board who feels like that is really, really important. You know, building Hope 2, we don't want to we want this to be a good investment for our community, and we want to do the right thing in terms of how we build this. And I think energy efficiency is really, really important. And there are some high standards to meet, but we intend to go above and beyond. We're still in those final design decisions. And in fact, I was just on a call right before this that we're really trying to make sure that this makes sense and that we can be 100% proud of this building. Jen Shank, who was just here, you know, is constantly in my ear about how about this and how about this and how about this. And so we have a bunch of cheerleaders that want to make sure that this makes sense and that we can be a model for future buildings on this campus.
You're gonna look like a sore thumb with no solar on that property. Everywhere else has solar. No, that's great. And it is a beautiful building, and I've heard bits and pieces of this project come along. It's really exciting. My one question for you was, besides that, was around the FERC's existing real estate, and you answered that question. So thank you.
I just want to make a comment that I'm just so excited for this, and I will look forward to showing up for groundbreaking.
Thank you. We'd love to have you all there. Thank you.
If I can come.
This is your official invite. And you're officially inviting everybody here. Sorry, who was on the computer?
Yeah, thank you for everything you do. It's really important for sure. And listen to Barbara because she knows.
Mhm.
I did a deconstruction for her, one of the first in Summit County, actually many years ago, and it was the real thing. We don't do it enough, you know, and so we need people like Barbara to be pushing the
And great programs like the HC3 has, right? So demolition and being able to repurpose that stuff in a better way and be able to streamline how we do that. So
for sure. So I'm greatly looking forward to it. I think it's going to be a great project and all. You said you had a monetary ask of the town. Do you know what that is? Do you have something in mind?
We would like $1 million, please.
well, we
No,
got it once. We think we should just keep asking for it.
Just thought I would try. No, so we are looking for some significant contributions from all of the towns. And that means different things to different towns in terms of what is able to be done. You all support both of our agencies and, you know, just our program and general operating and through the nicotine tax dollars. And so we certainly would be remiss to not bring that up and thank you all for that. This would be an above and beyond ask to get this built. And as you can see, we are almost 75% of the way there, but that last 25% is going to be the hardest. We have the county has given us $328,000 in loan forgiveness so that we can turn that money right back into this building. And we're currently working with the town of Dillon and the town of Silverthorne for some pretty significant contributions in terms of not only building the food pantry in the town of Silverthorne, but some financial contributions so we can get this built. So while we struggled with that exact amount to ask, we have a long way to go, and this is the hardest part. And so we just want to, I guess, let you know that we care about this workforce problem that exists in Summit County. And so whatever you can do to get us to the finish line, whatever makes sense is going to be really important.
It's a council of 7, so you guys have to.
Or $1 million.
Or $1 million.
Either way, I would suggest we are entering the budget process,
Precisely.
and that's part of the conversation. So your timing of presenting is good. The ability to have an answer is probably not tonight on $1 million.
So, yeah.
That's what we'll do.
Yeah,
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for all your support.
It's amazing, but I just want to say, like, those numbers staggered me when I read them. I had no idea. So thank you for.
Yeah, I think we've been really busy, and I think
Really difficult.
Yeah, it's been a really tough couple of years. And so honestly, this is a bright spot. And we have struggled being executive directors and trying to keep everything afloat and keep our employees feeling okay. And been a really good team through this. And this is not only like something just great for the community, but it's something really nice for us too, that we are working on a project that really we know will bring some real light to Summit County. And so we're really excited. So thank you for seeing that. Yeah, appreciate it.
Good stuff. And I've
All right.
been
Thank
part
you.
of a community that had a community campus as opposed to a partnership. And so
Exactly.
I already look forward to the next building and the other agencies and
Yeah,
We do too.
we do
We do
too.
too. We like to collaborate.
coming together.
It's really
It's a
good.
great, great project.
Yeah. Well, and we're good at collaboration. It's part of what we do. So
It's important.
that is what we are known by across the state.
True.
Right? Seriously.
So thanks for partnering with us
Yeah.
and collaborating with us.
Guys, have a great meeting and thank you for all your work as council people. It is hard work. So, and not glorious. necessarily. Not in it for the fame.
Take a quick five. All right.
Yep.
We're all back.
Back on.
Agenda item next, number 3, short-term rental overview strategies. And this is a continuation of a previous conversation. So a couple things of housekeeping. As a work session, the way this is generally viewed is this is an opportunity for us as council to have a conversation in a more informal setting. It's an opportunity for the public to observe the process. Work sessions, we've seen a ton of feedback and information that we're going to talk about, but work sessions is not an opportunity for public input. We have the opportunity for public input both at the beginning of the regular meeting, which will be at 7 o'clock. And if or when this comes in the form of an ordinance, probably at the next meeting, there will be plenty of time for public comment on the proposed ordinance. So I appreciate, as we start, all of the input, and we've received a ton of it. And it's been noted, and we've received the emails that were sent as recently as today. Again, this is a continuation of the previous conversation where I think we as council said, yes, we would like to pursue a cap, but there's some details that still need to be worked out. So I really appreciate you guys pursuing further feedback from some of the stakeholders and kind of focusing us towards the conversations of, you know, what's our percentages, use it or lose it questions, license types, do we have exemptions, things like that. So with that, Danelle, I'd like to turn it over to you, and then we'll keep this process moving.
Thanks so much. And if you could put my presentation up, please. Thanks. Good afternoon, everyone. So today's STR discussion does follow the general flow of my staff report. This is the agenda that I had planned for today. We may be able to lightly touch on some of these topics. We'll make that decision here in just a moment here. I was going to start by providing a quick background on how we got to where we are today, present an analysis of all of the data that we've been gathering since June, and then make some specific recommendations and conclude with specific questions for council. As was just mentioned, today's discussion is a continuation of the June 14th and June 28th Town Council work sessions. So back on June 14th, we presented a general overview and some potential strategies that could be considered going forward with short-term rentals here in Frisco. At that work session, council did express an interest in a short-term rental license cap. Because of that, we came back 2 weeks later and presented 3 different options for implementing a license cap. At that point, there wasn't consensus amongst councils, so we were instructed to come back to a work session in August with more information. So that is what we are doing today. Since my staff report was published last week, we have received some recent feedback indicating that council has reached consensus and would like to move forward with a short-term rental license cap. So if that's the case, we might be able to just kind of fast forward through some of these slides and focus on the license cap portion of the presentation. Is everyone in agreement with that? Okay, sure. So we'll just start by taking a look at what the neighboring municipalities are doing here. So starting with Silverthorne, that only has 247 short-term rental license. That equates to 9% of its housing stock. Their license fees start at $150 for a studio and go up $50 per bedroom from there to a maximum of $500. They do not support a moratorium right now, but they are considering a 10% license cap in the neighborhood zones and a 50% license cap in the town core zone district and the riverfront zone district. Those are the 2 areas just right around their downtown where the higher densities are allowed. Jumping over to Dillon, that has approximately 33% of their housing stock as STRs. Their license fee is a flat $250. It is paid annually upon renewal. They did just implement new occupancy and parking requirements in their regulations back in March, and they will be putting a question out to their voters on the November 8th ballot, asking if they would like to implement a 5% short-term rental excise tax. At this time, they do not support a moratorium or a license cap. Then jumping over to the other end of the county in Breckenridge, there are 4,300 short-term rentals, which is over half of the housing stock. Their license fee is $400 per bedroom. Town council just recently, 2 weeks ago, voted to approve the first reading of an ordinance, which would implement a cap in 4 different zones. So the tourism zone would have a cap of 1,620 licenses. Downtown would have 130 licenses. There would be no cap in the resort zone. That was kind of confusing for me because they set it at 1,700 or whatever the maximum, the 100% of units that are in that zone. So it's basically no cap. And then 390 licenses in all other zones. Then Summit County has just over 4,600 short-term rentals, which is 31% of their housing stock. The license fee ranges from $215 all the way up to $4,925. They have recently implemented a 9-month moratorium so that they can focus on revising the regulations in the neighborhood zone. And they are considering all options at this point for those revised regulations. So in summary, we've got Silverthorne, Breckenridge, Summit County, all focusing on this multi-zone approach to a license cap. Dillon is not in favor of a license cap. They're focusing more on occupancy, parking, and license fees. So we did have the survey results included in my packet that I published. All of the attachments included those results. Quickly, I'll just touch on this. We sent out 3 surveys. The first one was to 344 Frisco business owners. We got 77 responses. It just really appeared that the business owners are kind of stuck in the middle. On the one hand, they need the tourism to sustain their businesses. On the other hand, they need affordable housing to retain their employees, right? So they did express that even though they're struggling with these challenges for housing their employees, they don't think that capping short-term rentals would solve the problem. And instead, they suggested pursuing a balance in an economy that continues to serve tourists and a community where locals can thrive. So moving on to the survey results of the realtors, we sent this to 660 local realtors and we received 190 responses. So when we asked them to predict how a short-term rental license cap would impact the Frisco real estate market, the majority agreed that it would result in a decreased volume of sales, decreased prices, increased inventory of homes listed for sale, and a shift in the type of clientele, meaning that instead of short-term rental buyers, you now have wealthier cash buyers that are looking to buy a vacant second home. And these predictions do align with the observations that the realtors made about how they think the Breckenridge and Summit County moratorium and cap are impacting their real estate markets. So then we have the survey results for the property managers. We sent this survey to all property managers in our short-term rental database. That was a total of 19 companies who received 8 responses. From that survey, we learned that most of them, 75%, do support an exempt license for locals who use their short-term rental as a primary residence. On the other hand, 62% do not support exempting long-term rentals that only short-term rent in between long-term leases from the cap. They clarified that that is because the people who are short-term renting in between what they are calling a long-term lease is not, they're not actually making their properties available for a typical 6-month or 1-year lease. They're renting in shoulder season when tourism is down and short-term rental occupancy is down, and making those properties available for like a 2-month long-term lease. So it just doesn't really meet the needs of the local workers. Because of that, we do not recommend implementing a license type that would exempt these types of properties from the license cap. From the survey, we also learned that most short-term rental properties are occupied somewhere between 90 to 180 nights per year. And they recommended that if a cap is implemented, it should be somewhere between 25 to 51% of the housing stock. So after evaluating the survey data, we did have 2 different roundtable discussions. The one was with realtors and the other was with property managers. The first discussion with a group of realtors was they were all in agreement. They had a general message that they communicated that COVID created this anomalous real estate market. And the data shows that that market is currently slowing and maybe even going back to pre-pandemic numbers. We did gather some statistics from Land Title, which is, I'm showing you a couple of those statistics here, but there were more included in my staff report and the attachments. So Land Title shows that monetary volume is down 37% from last year, and transactions are also down 44% compared to June of last year. So the basic idea from the group of the realtors is that implementing a short-term rental license cap at this point in time would be reactionary from their perspective. So overall, they don't believe a cap would increase the availability of workforce housing, And taking away the ability to short-term rent would decrease property values by about 15 to 20%, but it still wouldn't be to an attainable point for the local workforce. All right, so moving on to the roundtable discussion with the property managers. That group was opposed to the idea of a short-term rental license cap. Everyone in the group kind of reiterated what the realtors were saying, that the current market is slowing and that their data shows that short-term rental occupancy is currently down. If, however, a cap is implemented, they suggested that it should be somewhere between 25 to 40% of the housing stock. They said, you know, let's keep it simple. They don't support more than one license type, and they do not support the use it or lose it policy. All right, so that brings me to the short-term rental conversion data. So we did want to understand how short-term rentals are impacting the availability of housing. So what we did was we took the real estate sales data for the past 3 years and calculated how frequently the sale of a residential home results in a conversion to a new short-term rental. And I showed you some of these numbers back in June, but we only had, I think it was 4 months worth. So it just was a really small snippet of information. So since June, we've been calculating the past 3 years worth of information. We found that there were 756 residential properties that sold since January 1st of 2020 until July 31st of 2022. Over half of them, 495 of them, resulted in no change in the existing use. So those that were short-term rentals before the sale remained short-term rentals after the sale. Those that were not short-term rentals before the sale remained not a short-term rental. And that number also includes 18 deed restricted sales. In addition to that, there were 202 units that did convert to a new short-term rental. That number is offset by 36 sales that converted from a short-term rental. They took their properties off the market. Therefore, the net number of STR conversions is 166 units, which equates to 4.6% of the housing stock. When looking at those numbers, we did notice that the STR conversion frequency was much higher in 2020 and 2021 in comparison to what we're seeing now in 2022. So we're hoping that the STR conversion frequency may be slowing along with the real estate market. It's kind of too soon to predict at this point, and it's such a small sample of information. Since our data only goes back to 2020, it's hard to say definitively that specific properties that we're saying converted in 2020 or 2021 had never been used as a short-term rental previous to that, since we just started regulating in 2019. So that pretty much sums up the data that we have gathered since June, and we can move on to some specific recommendations. So for the short-term rental license cap, we would recommend setting the cap at 22% of the housing stock, which would allow for 792 licenses. That number is slightly higher than where we are at today. And then we have some proposed code language for that license cap, which is here on this slide. It says maximum allowable number of short-term rental licenses. The town hereby establishes the maximum number of short-term rental licenses as 22% of the residential housing units within town boundaries. In my staff report, I also mentioned that we could consider doing an economic impact study. So to sort of understand how many STRs are needed to sustain our economy and how STRs are impacting the workforce housing needs, that economic impact study would help answer some questions like how much are STR guests spending? How does that spending flow throughout our economy? How many jobs are supported by that spending, and how much do these employees earn, et cetera. So that we have recommended that we do an economic impact study, and we estimate it would cost around $40,000 and take anywhere from 6 months to a year to complete. All right, so next, let's move along to license types. We are recommending that an exempt license type would be implemented, exempting any locals who use their, or short-term rent their primary residence. We would exempt them from the license cap. So there's some specific code language that would go along with that if we were to implement that license type. And to clarify, we were proposing 2 license types. So there would be the exempt license and the standard license. The exempt license would be for the locals who use it as a primary residence. The standard license would be for everyone else. So first in the code, we're proposing to specify that a property owner who occupies their residence as a primary residence and meets the requirements set forth in the exempt license definition is eligible to apply for and receive licenses annually without being subject to the maximum number of allowable short-term rental licenses established in section 110-38, provided, however, such persons shall comply with all other provisions of this chapter. After that, we would have to include a definition of an exempt license. So that's the next block on your screen there. An STR license which may be issued to a property owner that proves at initial application and at subsequent annual renewals that the property to be licensed as a short-term rental is the primary residence of the property owner. Such proof shall include a notarized affidavit in addition to 2 forms of documentation, including a driver's license, Colorado state identification card, voter registration, and the current year federal tax filing showing the property to be licensed as the property owner's primary address. And then with that, it triggers the need for the definition of a primary residence. So this next block of text has some red lines in it, and I'll cover that in just a second here. But we're proposing the definition would be primary residence means a residence which is the usual place of return for housing as documented by the vested title property owner of record, signing an affidavit to that effect and providing at least 2 of the following: driver's license, Colorado state identification card, voter registration, and tax documents. The primary residence shall be occupied as the primary residence for a minimum of 10 months per year. A person can have only 1 primary residence. So after the staff report was published and before my presentation, we noticed that the word or should actually be and. So we're making that correction right now. And then the 10 months per year is highlighted in red because we would love to get council's feedback. That was a number discussed among staff, but it may be hard to enforce. And we would like to know if council agrees with that number or if you would like to see that taken out. All right, so the last topic I wanted to address is pairing a use it or lose it policy with a license cap. Since June, we have been collaborating with our short-term rental software vendor, GovOS, to pull reports and find out how many of our licensed short-term rental owners are actively short-term renting their properties. So what we discovered in this process is that we know exactly how many short-term rental licenses there are, and we know exactly how many properties don't have a short-term rental license. But to find out how many are actively renting is somewhat of a gray area. And I'll explain why. We pulled these reports to show how many nights are blocked off on the short-term rental booking calendars. And then we compared the nights blocked with the tax remittance data. And we made an estimate that there's approximately 250 licensed short-term rental properties in Frisco that are not actively renting. However, the data we realize is flawed because if a calendar is blocked off, it doesn't necessarily mean it's short-term rented. And there's no way to prove if it's being short-term rented, if it's being used by the owner, or if it's just being blocked off so that it doesn't get reserved. Also, the tax remittance data is not 100% reliable either, because when we receive that data from places like VRBO or these large property managers who are filing in bulk on behalf of the property owners, we don't necessarily get the level of detail that we would need in order to determine which properties are actively renting. So because of that, it would be extremely difficult to enforce this, and we do not recommend implementing this policy. All right, so this is the last slide in my presentation. These are all of the questions that we have for council. It sounds like the first one has already been answered. So we would like to know what cap number council thinks is appropriate, which license types council supports. Does council want a use it or lose it policy, and should we pursue an economic impact study?
And the 10-month rule.
Yes.
Good point.
We take them in order?
I have a clarifying question.
Sure, I'm sorry.
So related to the license types, you said staff is not recommending, but then we just went through exempt license types. Can you just clarify what it is that you are and are not recommending?
Yeah, sure. We're recommending an exempt license type that would exempt locals who utilize their primary residence as a short-term rental. I said that backwards. They utilize their short-term rental as a primary residence. But we are not recommending a license type that would exempt properties that only short-term rent in between what they are calling a long-term lease, because those particular properties are not the typical 6-month to 1-year leases that the workforce needs.
Okay, thank you for that.
Sure.
Again, good stuff. A lot of stuff too. So staff recommendation is 22% of our dwelling units plus the primary residence exempt units, correct?
Correct.
Thoughts?
Sorry, I have another question. Lots of information. I get lost in the data here. So related to how many potential exempt licenses do you think are out there? Did I miss that part? Like, do you have an estimate for that number that would be above the 22%?
It was,
Well, the trainer is use it or lose it.
Yeah.
So
no, we had a specific number, and I think it was 9% of our short-term rental licenses. Let me look here. Yeah. 117 of all Frisco short-term rentals are owned by Summit County locals. That's based on the assessor's database showing their mailing addresses. So we would need them to actually provide that proof to verify that number.
okay, thank you.
Sure.
So you want to go with the percentage straight away? Is that what?
Yeah, I'm taking them in order.
Okay.
Thoughts?
Just start from this side.
I'm for the 22%. I think that's a good balance. I think that we can keep room for others.
It's the 22%, like, I guess they kind of go together, because if we support an exempt, like owner occupied license, is that 117 units going to come, like,
That's above the 22%.
okay, that's what I'm,
Yeah.
yeah, okay. Just checking in on that one. So if we did a 22% cap, say you're new and I've been getting a lot of emails from people who, their places haven't even been built yet. So how would they have the opportunity to get a license if by the time their unit's built, we're at that 22%?
Seem like we're that close to that, though, does it?
We are, except if you exclude the locals. Yeah, we
We're
are.
getting close. Would we be able to look at possibly, I don't know, like, there's some people that have had licenses for a long time that might want to renew them every year. But then there's people that might not be able to get a license. We'd have to adjust this cap as we get more units in town.
Well, because it's percentage based though, if you add more units, it's a percentage of total units. So that number is a floating. You add a
Right.
new unit, it's 22% of the new total number. So
So if we build like all the new workforce housing units, that will help increase the cap percentage.
won't increase the percentage, but it'll,
When we
the
put,
number.
The gross number of licenses allowed, yeah.
when we put the CDOT project, when that becomes a project, right?
Right.
23 units, 22%, that's 5 more short-term rental units that become available.
Right.
Yes.
One thing I'd mention on that in the exempt licenses, so right now we don't have an exempt license type, and we have, I believe, 782 license was currently issued at this time, so we'd be getting pretty close. And up to 117 of those are this potentially locally exempt licenses. It will take some time and probably some cooperation of those people to convert their licenses over. They're under no obligation to do so. So there's a possibility that none of those 117 convert their license to the exempt license type, unless there was some incentive to do so, such as, I don't know, a lower fee, higher fee, whatever else it might be.
I'm curious about like, I guess. Not to make things, I don't know, maybe you guys can help me think through it. But what if we did like, I don't know, like a lottery type? There's a lot of communities that do lotteries for short-term rental licenses. To just open it up, like. We could say we're gonna cap it at 22% or 800 licenses and just, I don't know, make it available to any, like 2,000 people can apply for a license. But we're only gonna give out 800 or whatever it ends up being. That might be more work.
I don't know, it sounds like a lot of work to me.
I
and
just
it
wanna
sounds like
keep it-
taking all the licenses away and then reissuing them.
Well, I'm just concerned that some people may not ever be able to get a license at all. So then is it fair for the same people to constantly be able to renew the license over and over and over again? So then that kind of feels weird to me, I guess. Like, how do we, because then if we're gonna cap it, then how does everybody get to play? I don't know, it's a dumb way to say it.
Everyone doesn't get to play if we can.
Yeah, so I guess I'm just trying to wrap my brains around there.
Only those who come in after we hit the cap. Everybody right now who wants a license has a license.
Right, so the question, if I
so
can
now-
jump in, is, are we, without an economic impact study, can we determine that we should be at the cap right now? I mean, 22% based off of 21.5% at 775 units in the town, we're racing there, right? And is that the necessity for this particular thing? This is my question, because most of it is really, the question is STR versus vacant versus workforce housing, right? If we cap STRs, what does that affect with workforce housing? Right? Because so personally, I don't believe that the STRs have that much effect. I believe that if we cap it, then we're looking at a whole lot more vacant homes, which we've all discussed is not really what we're trying to achieve, right? And so, because this is the thing, right? I
Yeah.
mean, the main deal is that we're knocking down all these old buildings, we're building these new buildings. They are not going to be workforce housing unless they are built to be that, right? And so if all of these market value units are capped and can't short term it, then what is that gaining us towards workforce housing? What is that gaining us towards just vacant homes, right? So personally, I am not at 22%. Like I'm more like 30% or 40%, depending on what an economic impact study says. And, based off of the other towns, right? Silverthorne's at 9%, Dillon's at 33%, Breck 56%, Summit County's at 31%. So I have a big problem in here about just saying we are there right now, because I don't believe that we have any real metrics that says we are there at our cap, and that this is gonna change workforce housing.
So
I think, go ahead. The premise that this is changing workforce housing isn't the only motivator
Right.
of this. This is, we've sat in meeting about having Frisco be a community, having Frisco be a neighborhood. And I use the analogy, if you have a 10-unit townhouse complex and it has 0 short-term rentals in there, you have a community. If it has 2 short-term rentals in there, those 2 users have to abide by the community atmosphere. When you get to 5 short-term rentals in this little townhouse community, all of a sudden it's not a community anymore. It's a rental
Why
project.
can't you have 10
And-
units that are vacant?
That may be, but we don't. We have,
That's what we're
I'm
forcing.
I'm also protecting the community of Frisco. And I
there's a-
think that the other communities, Breckenridge they've acknowledged that they went too far. And now they have to come back by 2,000 units. We can't, I don't want to go there. And I don't think we can ever go back. I think what Breckenridge has done is a shame because they didn't do it soon enough. We can always, if we do 22, which gives everybody currently with a license the right to keep their license. If we stay there, we can always go up. If we go to 25 or 30, and then we realize that our community character has been lost, going backwards is a very different conversation. So.
I just think it's like it's a balancing act of community and local character with economics and workforce housing. For me, that's how I look at it. I can't see just one of those things. So, I mean, I don't know, I'm not against bumping it up to beyond 22, but I'm just curious, like how we're, I just don't want to close that door on any, it just seems like we're closing the door and being like, well, this guy, everybody's, all these 700 and some people are, I don't know, I'm worst case scenario, but like, how do we keep it fair to everyone?
Who's the, I just need clarification. What's the unfair, who's being shut out? Is it just the
Well, I guess.
the next person in
to me,
after the
it
count?
feels like to me, it feels like I just don't know how many units are gonna be built and how this percentage will rise. Like, I'm worried that we would limit it to like no new person would be able to get a short-term rental.
Until
license.
somebody loses the license.
Right.
Yeah.
And so what are we?
Or this 37 last year that converted from one to the other. I mean, there were 37 of those that freed up last year. Will that happen every year? No. Will the amount be more? Maybe.
I thought it was very telling. Can you confirm, you gave the numbers, like 700 something units were sold between 2020 and now, which is like a 20% turnover of all of our housing stock in 3 years.
Do we know what the conversion data says from long-term rentals to short-term rentals, or to like how many long-term rentals have we lost? I guess is what I'm curious. Like, we don't have that number.
Because we don't license long-term rentals.
I know, but is there any data? Like, is there any, like, I guess we could, I don't know, like, so that's the piece that I'm missing, It's hard to have this conversation when we don't even know how many long-term units we've lost in our community over whatever period of time.
We do, but losing those units, I don't personally believe it's so much like they kicked you out of the cabin and now they're short-term renting the cabin. It's they kicked you out of the cabin, they knocked the cabin down, they built a fourplex, and then, they're going and short-term renting 3 of them and keeping 1, or, that sort of thing. That's the way I view it.
The other story as well from several
There's
people.
probably a variety of scenarios that happen. When you talk about like being fair, I'm much more concerned about being fair to our community and
So am
and
I,
keeping
but
it a
I
community.
mean,
I didn't, yeah.
I think there's a balance, like I'm looking for a balance, and that is fair to me.
Mhm.
Because I need both. I need people to
Absolutely,
visit, and I
right.
also need a workforce, like.
That goes back to when you said about being sustainable economically, right? What we have right now is pretty sustainable for us, right? It's keeping our businesses going. We have a hard time staffing to keep up. If we have more visitors,
I mean, I don't know,
Only always have more visitors.
yeah, I mean,
Only always gonna have more
Yeah.
visitors from this day forward.
but I'm also, I've talked to a lot of realtors too, and I'm, almost every single one of them said, well, then you're just gonna keep empty houses, So I'm just trying to find the balance of like what it is. Like my staff's almost burnt out. I probably have to close for a month because we're busy. But, you know, again, I have people that live in the woods working
Do you have
for
a
me.
number?
A number?
The conversation is, if
22%?
is 22,
Oh.
yeah, yeah, I mean, because
I have a
we've got,
build-out question when we get a second.
I just want to keep us moving towards.
All right,
if-
I'm
if-
done.
No, I don't want to shut it off, but,
I wasn't there yet. but
okay.
Just keep going.
Yeah,
What-
I think and for me, I am not at 22 and I feel like it's very arbitrary at this point. You know, because I don't feel that there's any other real metric saying that we should or we need to shut this down now, because I believe we will create more empty places. And this is something that 2.5 years ago, we were trying to avoid at all costs, was like empty places. That's what we've always been here.
Where we're not even at.
I feel like we're
talking-
shining the light and all the bug, like
So-
in June, when we looked at the data, the rental license applications had flatlined. Like until we started talking about it. And then all of us, so it's like,
Yeah, there of course will be a rush, but so the 22%, I mean, just getting back to that,
So you're not.
I'm not at 22%.
Do you have build out numbers, like when we're talking about knocking down a cabin and replacing it with 4, what the density is? So what is the potential, like if town is built out, like what is your best guess for how many units, residential units that is?
That's one of my great goals, and Susan just pulled up something from the community plan that says somewhere in the ballpark of 200 additional units. Same time, that number is always a moving target when we look at, because of density bonuses and other things like that. As an example, using just the base build out, the Granite Park project, 619 Granite, that's 9 under the build out, but we're putting 22 there. So all of these projects, it is always a moving target. So that is one of my goals, is to further refine that, because it's great for infrastructure purposes and other things, but maybe our build out's 4,000, but I think it actually has more potential than that.
Thank you.
In the interest of giving guidance, I view it as we have the option of, we can plug in if we have some direction from council, meaning 4 of us who provide direction, or we can punt this one till the next meeting, and say, do the ordinance and leave the number blank, and over the course of the next 2 weeks, we have further
Like, how about-
conversation.
Do we want to do an economic impact study between us as far as that being the question based off of the decision that we're gonna make?
that
That's-
data is gonna be out like a year away. And really
And
expensive.
I would
Can
question
you
that.
go over,
What-
can
what-
you
what
go
would
over
we
the
find out?
scope of what that would be? Because when you were describing it, I was like, oh, it's the Airbnb study we just read. Like, so in my mind, it has to be a lot more balanced than that, because but if you can describe the scope of what you were thinking for that would be helpful.
Yeah, absolutely. So the town of Breckenridge did pay for a short-term rental impact study is what they called it. They had EPS, a contractor, come in and do this study for them. And it was basically an economic evaluation of how much short-term rental guests are spending, how that spending flows throughout the local economy in the town, how many jobs short-term rentals create, and then how much those employees earn, how much housing those employees need, and then what that gap is between the housing market and employee affordability. So that study could address a number of things. We could define that scope, but it could address license fees. It could address a database license cap number, several different things that it could address in that one study.
I think the primary thing that one of the main things that Breckenridge used that study for was to set what the license fee is on a per bedroom basis, based essentially the size of the STR. The larger the STR, the more of an impact it is on housing the local economy. Therefore, the fee was higher on a per bedroom
But
basis.
they only went with 50% of the recommended
Correct.
level. I mean, they didn't even go the whole way in, right?
Yeah, their study justified a $756 fee per bedroom, and
Because they were trying to come up with a nexus to workforce housing very specifically.
Correct. And frankly, I think that would be a staff recommendation to have that nexus for that study.
I'm wondering what workforce spends annually in our community as well, you know, like, I don't know. I want to see the data from both sides, like how much does workforce people spend? I don't know.
Go ahead, I'm sorry.
I mean, I don't know. I feel like in my business, like I have a even flow of locals and visitors. So I'm, you know, I'm just curious. I don't know.
I go back to a lot of this is there was no poll of this, what I view as the businesses are critical stakeholders. Our residents are equally, if not more so, critical stakeholders in this conversation. And anybody who lives in one of our residences is one sale away from having a short-term rental as their new neighbor. I don't think that's their preferred choice.
And we could
And
wind up with
that-
those people selling and having an empty house or another STR, because I wouldn't want to live next door to a house.
Well, and when you look at spending, you know, I think your average occupancy is, you said 90 to 180 days for a unit. Like, while those people might have a higher like per visit expenditure in town, and frankly, they're probably spending it in Breckenridge, not in Frisco. But you know, you have that higher expenditure, but you have people who are spending a little bit less, but living here year round. And so, you know, you have, like, if you want to strike a balance, then we're kind of there. I mean, in a way, we're at that point where, you know, in a lot of ways, it kind of feels like we have achieved that balance here. And with going with the percentage numbers, that will grow a little bit with build out. And you know, it'll just, I guess, going back to your point, like, it's not the end of the day, right? Like, if we see that this isn't right, we can always bump it up or make, you know, but I don't think that we have to sit here and do nothing because we're going to wait and see. And, you know, all of this data, everything that we're seeing is the last 2.5 years. Like, it is, no one has lived through anything like that. And so I just don't, you know, in a lot of ways, to predict the next 10, 15, 20 years based on the last 3 is kind of crazy. And so I think that we take the first step. We can change it and adjust it as needed. We can look at what build out is. I'm worried that we get an economic analysis study that, well, I'm not worried about it actually, because if it's enlightening in that way, then we can help address housing too. But like, it might show a lot more. We don't know what it'll show. I guess, you know, I don't want to speculate on what it will show, but it could potentially show a really, really tight nexus between those two things. And the next thing you know, we're going to be going after STRs to help with housing, which we kind of already are, but like to a much greater extent than we would be by starting with 22% licenses. So
That's real data.
I want to add,
That if we were able to point at that and say that, well, here's the nexus, then so be it. Right now, we're guessing.
Yeah, but
100% guessing. Just because it feels good right now, as far as where we're at, doesn't mean that's what we can support.
you know, one of the comments from the realtors to the question of what's been the impact of Breckenridge, somewhere around 20 to 25% of those comments said, my buyers are now looking in other communities with fewer STR regulations, which is, unless we do something, us, and again, I feel like we're in balance. Let's sort of stay in the hemisphere we're in. If we feel the pressure, that number can change. And I do want to be mindful of, one is our planning commission folks who are coming in 10 minutes, and the list of other questions we have to address. And Rick, if you have the opportunity to weigh in, because I would like to just sort of get a sense of what should we be doing here. Rick, are you there?
I am. Thanks, guys. I had to pop out, but I'm back now. I just wanted to, and if I repeat anything that's already been said, I apologize. But I believe that our goal is to not utilize this cap to increase, at least I'll say this, my goal as having a cap is to not increase available housing to workforce, although that would be a nice outcome of it. My goal of implementing the cap is to maintain our community character. And so with that in mind, I believe it feels like we're in a good balance, I'm curious what is this economic impact study to tell us? How much per visitor, per STR, per visit they're spending? I don't understand what data is going to come out of that wouldn't muddy waters and or has already been provided in other municipalities. So I don't know, there is a question, what that economic impact study would provide us. Other than those is how much are those folks spending? But at the same time, if our whole goal is to preserve our community character, does that information, is it useful to us? And again, we'd be flexible if we were to, if and when a cap were to be put in place and we found out it was detrimental to the community, we have the ability to go back and adjust it. So I think, right, what were the questions for tonight was, what's the percentage? Is there going to be a use it or lose it? And are we going to have two different license models? I'll say this from my perspective. Yeah, the owner occupied, yeah, it needs to be a carve out for our working families and working individuals who rent out the room in their home have to have a separate license, not subject to the cap. I think the cap at the number recommended by staff is the one that we organically fell on as a team at 22%. And the use it or lose it, I'm open to hearing more on that, but from staff's perspective, if we have to strike that balance of economic impact, if we have licenses that aren't being used and we're not having those, if you will, dollars flow through the community, then that license is stagnant and not benefiting anyone, is how I hear that. But the other side of that argument from the staff report is that that's hard to police. So I get that. I'm not a fan of creating ordinances that can't be enforced. So that may be a reason for me to not look at a use it or lose it. Chasing things that inevitably are hard to do is a lot of expensive staff time. I hope that helps a little bit, Andy.
Well, it will in a second, because I'm going to pin you down a little bit of,
yeah.
If I have to make a check mark on a sheet of paper, is your direction to council or direction to staff the recommended 22% plus exemptions?
Yes.
And okay, which is really the only question we've fully vetted. Do you have a thought?
Yeah, no, I'm supportive of staff's recommendation.
Okay. I am as well.
I'm gonna skip this.
Okay.
And I'll also add that I would like to skip the 10-month requirement. I think that's too hard.
Wait, let's hang on. We're going to get there. I agree, but Andy?
I'm a no on 22%.
Direction to staff is bring the ordinance with the blank filled in at 22% plus the exemption. Exemption for primary owners, which I think we're all good with, right? 100%. We want, and we want to encourage people actually to utilize their real estate as a way of being able to live and work here without having to go get a third job.
Does it need to be an exemption or they're just not covered? Like, do they have to go through? I mean, I guess you have to prove the residential piece. So there is a reporting. Okay.
Correct. And I think we'd still want them to, or definitely would still want them to get a license for the same reason that we implemented license regulations in the first place.
Can they use it or lose it? Nobody's in favor. Okay. And then to the 10-month question, is anybody advocating in favor? Basically, I want to summarize.
Yeah, I was gonna say, can you pull that language back up again?
I can.
If you prove through your ID, through your tax filings that this is your primary residence, and I use the example, yeah, I mean, I think that's your primary residence. If you want to teach skiing all winter and then go to New Zealand and teach skiing all summer and rent your place out in the summer. But this is where you are licensed. This is your primary. It's simpler. We're all good. I agree with that.
Yep.
Nicely done. Let me just see. A question I think that you and I talked about, I'll raise if you want to, of Okay, if we hit the cap, and if we hit the cap, is it just wait list, is it, so, okay.
Yeah,
Is
and
that, and this is maybe to Thad, because we want to make sure we know that you're there, Thad. Is that, if that's something that needs to be in the ordinance, great. If it does not need to be in the ordinance, that's great too, but let's look at that.
I'm sorry, you're asking me about the exemption issue as
No,
opposed to.
no, once or if we hit a cap, and there
Right.
are people who are applying that are blocked out, how they are selected, how the next one gets issued. Is that something in the ordinance, or that's just policy that is outside ordinance necessity?
You're,
Makes sense.
for the refusal, or you mean in the event
No,
that we.
They come in,
we-
that they come in, let's make it ridiculous, and 250 people race in and apply after the cap, and now they're all on a list. One becomes available.
Yeah. And they're waiting for licenses to come available through attrition or the like.
Correct.
And you're saying, how do you choose among them? First come, first serve. You keep track of the date and time that applications are received would be my recommendation, absent
Okay.
any.
And the question was
additional rules in the ordinance itself.
Say that again, I'm sorry.
So absent any rules set forth in the ordinance itself, what I would tell staff is for that purpose, in that event, you need to keep track of applications on date and time that they come in and treat this as a first come, first serve basis, unless otherwise provided for by way of, say, a lottery, whatever the case may be. But absent a rule in the ordinance, that would be my advice. First come, first serve, first serve.
And so the example happened earlier, there's a house under new construction and they want a short-term rental. At what point is it CO that they then can apply? So you can't, you gotta get your CO.
same thing with a sale transfer. You have to complete the sale and complete the transfer. A couple things to point out. So I think we said there's 756 property transactions in the past 2.5 years. So that's fairly often. And since STR licenses are not transferable, there will be a number of licenses continually coming available if we do get to the cap number. I think from staff perspective, I think I would like to kick around ideas on how to incentivize people to pursue the local exemption so we can get that underway as well.
I have two clarifying questions. So on the, I guess to go back to Jesse was bringing up the point of, right, we've heard from folks that are either building or in the process of buying. Where do they fall with like, how do we, are we going to address that as have an application on file by CO and or by transfer? Or what does that look like? Right, you've all seen those emails on those questions. I'm just looking for discussion on that, whether it's, we can either say exactly that, either by sale date or CO or something else. And I don't know what that something else is on those topics is the one point of discussion. And then two is, does the 10-month owner occupied need to be in that license type? And again, to go revisit the hard to enforce one, and then two, it's my understanding that if you provide a per the document, a driver's license with that as your residence on it, and then a voter registration, which you can only be registered in one physical location as a voter to be sufficient. And the 10 months seems to be well above and beyond that, in addition to being quasi unenforceable.
Rick, just to clarify, I think we all nodded to not having the 10-month requirement.
Thank you.
And so describing the transferability again, they don't transfer. So there's a sale, the new owner has to come in after closing, property's in their name, they have to apply for a new short-term rental license. So there will be turnover, as you just described.
Yep.
And then, yeah, new construction would be after CO.
Thanks, guys. I just wanted to make it crystal clear to myself and anyone else listening. Thanks.
Those who are observing or listening, what happens now is believe we've given staff sufficient direction to bring us an ordinance for the next meeting, at which time there will be further opportunity, or there will be opportunity for public comment. I also remind everybody that there will be opportunity for public comment on items not agendized, which would be this, in our regular meeting, which will start at 7 o'clock. Unless there's anything else, we're moving on to a cooperative joint session between council and the planning commission, which is why the tables in the back are set up the way they are. If you've never been here before, this is not the normal way. But if we can adjourn, how do you want to do this?
Continuing.
Sure.
If you want a 5-minute break, we can do that.
5 or 10 minutes, we can get some
Yep.
dinner and place ourselves there. And if you do want to sit and watch that meeting, you're more than welcome to stick around.
what's going on in the town. We haven't had the opportunity to do that for the past couple of years. We've got a couple of new council members, we've got a couple of planning commissioners. So first off, just wanted to start off and go around with introductions. Susan, if you want to start.
I think everyone knows me, but Susan Lee, principal planner here. I've been with the town since 2018, the spring of 2018, and I'm really excited to see this. So I reached both sides, right? We hear all the planning commissioner comments and all the town council comments. So it'll be good to see you guys. After listening, do like 1.5 and Shane is something. Andy Aaron's, for those of you who can read me, again, I'm not familiar.
Hello, everyone. I'm Diane McBride. I'm leaving from town manager for another day. Not one more day. I'm Leslie Edwards, I'm a finance director. I started with San Francisco in October, and before that, I was with director. I'm Emily. I'm a planner here. Right here. I'm Leah Leslie. I'm a town council member. I'm Jessica Potter, and I'm planning commissioner.
I would like to say, great for you. It's been 2 years and I was on a planning commission for the first time. Really wanted to try to make it connection better so we can get more input from you guys earlier in all of the processes.
I'm Robert Franken. I'm a planning commission member of three actually. And really look forward to hopefully we'll find a way to use steel, planning commissioners who is
I remain planning commissioner.
Don Army, Community Development Director. All right, so that's everything. And we, as staff, we really want this to be a conversation between town council and planning commission. So we didn't prepare a lengthy presentation or PowerPoint or any of that. You get enough of that anyway. So we did have a couple of topics that we lined up that we maybe spur some discussion. Town council goals for the next few years, upcoming town projects that are going on, challenges with code provisions. We often hear about, I don't know, parking, Jesse. Design standards, any other things that you see either as a planning commissioner or from the town council side as developments are happening, what are the impacts of those? And then potential upcoming code updates that staff is working on at direction of council that will be bringing forward to planning commission. So with that, I don't know, Jesse, do you want to, or Andy, do you want to do a quick, what's the town council working on, major goals?
Oh, man, really putting me on the spot.
This is the goal.
All right, so, you know, under Nancy's leadership, we did a lot of strategic planning and at a fairly high level, but really trying to tie staff work plans to a broader strategic goal. And so, not that long ago, we revisited those. We made sure we checked in with staff. We made sure that we were still on the right track. If we wanted to put any kind of lower on the priority list, we went through that exercise. We didn't really put that many on the not priority list. We kept most of it up top, but we still have our 5 core values. I'm definitely going to get them all wrong. Quality core services, environmental sustainability, recreation and culture, thriving economy, and inclusive community. Teamwork. Good job. And so within those, we kind of have, you know, various strategies or goals within those and have asked staff to work towards those. Primary thing for the summer has been looking at housing and short-term rentals, as you saw the discussion here not too long ago. And then also some of our new construction projects like Slopeside Hall, the CDOT project over on Granite, the purchase of the workforce housing,
Workforce center.
Workforce center. And really trying to focus on growing our workforce housing. That's kind of a high level. And then on the environmental sustainability piece, which kind of ties into all of that, you know, we're really looking to push the envelope related to net zero construction. We have new building codes, as you guys know and see and review plans for, and just looking at ways that we can be leaders as a government, but then also ask our community to kind of come along and meet some of our climate and sustainability goals. So I'll leave it at that. What did I miss? Childcare.
But you talk a little bit about, I mean, when we talk about workforce housing, the largest workforce housing project in the county is like this. And I know that the county hasn't always been playing nice with it, but it seems to me that that's been running around for some 20 years. And it's all about somewhere around 15% of our workforce housing problems in this county. What is council doing to bring the county along to really encourage it, since it is our closest neighbor?
So,
I might just add to that question too, or what are the hindrances?
yeah, sure. Which is, I think maybe more of what's holding the process up, but Andy.
I'll take a shot, because one is county, we walk down the path. Somebody take me under the table if I'm going to a place that I should go. We walked down the path with them. Our issue with Lake Hill, they wanted us to supply the water. Meaning it's their project, it's on their land, it's subject to their code. We have the water, the sand district has the sewer, separate entities. We were, I thought, at a point of, they've been proposing for the last 2 years, 436 units, whether it was mixed use, all that kind of stuff. Subject to detail, right? We've been walking down that path for 2 years. We were at a meeting and we got to a point, I thought that it became scary close to it. Where we were coming in for that, you know, that negotiation time where you really think you're going to get there. And at that point, they decided to abandon all the studies they had done for 436 and seek maximum density, which could be in their conversation numbers of 800 to 1,000. We don't have that water. Meaning they have, the whole deal was they have to supply us with water rights. We don't have the water. We don't have that. So really the negotiations broke down because they completely shifted gears. And I don't know what, we really haven't had much conversation since then. And now they're in a state of transition, shall we say. Scott Bard, a lot of leadership is gone. And the sand district felt very similar. Meaning we don't have any control over the sand district, but they were walking down the same path. They thought that they were at that close to the finish line. Their lawyers, they were drafting the agreement. They were at that point. And then they read in the newspaper that it all blew up. And they don't have the capacity at all for 1,000 units.
So does that mean we're totally dead with Lake Hill, or does that mean that we're waiting for the county to come back with some rational?
We sent them a letter after the negotiations broke down. We sent them a letter and said, we're still here. 436 units, kind of this is where we left off. So you can go do whatever studies you want, pursue whatever you want. If it doesn't work out, we're still here.
And I can add on to that a little bit. Shortly after the meeting that Andy's describing, there is the Board of County Commissioners gave direction to county staff to pursue the studies necessary to go to this 1,000 and potentially create their own water systems, their own central water system out there, potentially create their own wastewater treatment plant that would certainly fill in the So, those are not short studies. But as Councilman Aronson described, that the town is still willing to listen and work with where would they get water from? But they have water, right? So they drill a well and create a water treatment plant and go from there.
So was the problem attributable to the recent monster spike in commodities and construction materials and build costs? So it wasn't really, just looking at ROI.
I've asked that.
Yeah.
You lose every.
Right, the more you build, the better you return.
I've asked them very directly, is there a number that makes Lake Hill too expensive? And the answer is no.
That was one of the biggest also road. So they're scaling up, you know, to get from A to B, it's somewhere in the neighborhood of $60 million. Maybe less, maybe more, but that's just to make, you know, the consolidated district able to support these added places and our water supply to be able to support that as well. But the other thing is that we were coming to the table, and this is one of the biggest things, is that, you know, we only own enough, as far as I understand it, we only own enough water rights to support our own build out at this point. And from there, we have to pursue other water rights, right? So we'll have wet water, we will own it, right? So we'll have to pay for it, basically. And, you know, they flat out agreed that we're in this predicament, but we should race towards that ceiling faster. And we should have no hesitation to give them whatever. And that was kind of the whole thing. We came in as agreement to this negotiation, which is not a negotiation. They basically tore it up and literally threw it in our faces. And we're like, so what is it that you want? You want money? You know, is that what you want? And they said, well, yeah, we want money. They didn't tell us how much money or, you know, what part of the conversation that would be. They basically just said that Frisco has been the roadblock to not making this happen. And that's how, and I literally said to Elizabeth once, I said, listen, it's our view that the Board of County Commissioners, our elected officials, are pushing our town up against the wall and saying, this has to happen no matter what, and you're the ones who are, or you're the reason why it's not happening. Was there ever, and she agreed, she said, yeah, that's what I'm doing. And so it broke down at that point. Nobody had anything else to add. They said, we're just gonna go at it ourselves and we're gonna do it on our own. And that's where we're at in Lake Hill.
So it could still happen, but it's completely in the county's, in the county's hands. The town doesn't own the land. It's not annexed into the town, so we really have no say on it whatsoever. Whether, unless, council decides at the county's request, a reasonable request to provide the water.
But even though the town doesn't own the land, it's still within the town's purview, right?
No.
It's
you guys have it on us.
just
Yeah,
county. Never mind. The other important thing was, we heard very clearly from Fed, our town attorney, that we can't, when we provide them, they want 436 units, we have to give them, we have to sell them the water under the same terms that we would any developer. So when we went to them and said, yeah, this is the way it works. This is what, if you want the water service from us, we have to charge you this because we're a government. Otherwise, there's legal implications if we start to subsidize the project with the water fund. But we have 5A, which we'd be happy to have a conversation. And that's part of where it broke down. Like that's burdened with that reality. But
Where they are, the study. Does anyone know where?
So, but somebody can smile.
Well,
But for-
I just did, but it's okay. We don't have to have.
For the county, if we don't have Lake Hill ever built out. We're 20 years into Lake Hill. We haven't built a certain thing. If we go another 20, we may not have a county that has the infrastructure that we need, because we won't have the workers. If we can't provide the work for them. And sending them to Leadville or to.
They were 18 months from being on the ground. They were 18 months from starting like.
And my sense
Now they
is,
took the perfect.
if you put a ballot initiative on a reasonable ballot initiative to build like this with a limited lot tomorrow, the vast majority of people in this county would support that.
Sure.
And-
How are they gonna pay for it?
Well,
How are they gonna?
you do it on a tax basis. You do a limited tax for a number of years to build out Lakeville on the fastest possible road.
It's not the money is not the issue. You cannot, we owe the existing community within the jurisdiction of the town of Bristol protected water rights, and we cannot give it up without having other rights brought to the table. And it has nothing to do with the money. I mean, one day it'll be money. But between IAJ and Dole, like, there's a lot of money for housing coming down the pipe, and that was not where this was. It was based on water, it's based on infrastructure. We were in good faith negotiations at a certain amount. All of the studies, all of the funding that we put into the project was done at 436 or whatever it was. Going from that and adding 600 units to this conversation it set us back another 10 years. I mean, it's just, that's the reality.
And get us back on track a little bit. We could talk about Lakeville for 20 years. As long as we've been talking about it, but wanted to see if there's any other topics. No, I mean, like, it's important. It is important. I do want to say though, with housing, we are continuing to work on it as a town, as a county, everyone as the other jurisdictions as well. Lakeville is not the all and all to every 436 units, or 1,000 units or whatever. I mean, Town of Bristol, we've got on plans to go doubling in the next 5 years from 153 to 306-ish. Breckenridge, they have a goal of another X number of units. Summit County has a goal of 100,000. So there's a lot of housing on the table. Lakeville is a piece of it, but it's not the all.
And so we're collectively trying to do what we can do beyond, Lakeville is our jurisdiction. You don't get a step at this point. And so then we have to focus on what we have, and that's why we went and bought 406 8th Street. And then the Coyote parcel behind it, and there's 2 right of ways, and we can build out some, workforce density there that we wouldn't have otherwise had. Same with the workforce center, and same with CDOT, and so hopefully we can bump up this number by 2027, 300 and some odd units, so 47 units. But what is, and this is kind of one of the things I've been asking for a while, is like, what do we need? To support our town, to support our people, we need 1,000 units for workforce housing in this town. It's like that, that's my, I'm curious because.
So I think we lost a lot of rent. I don't know what the number is, but we're okay at 200.
And maybe actually that's a good segue into another topic is changes that we're seeing. I mean, I think we're all seeing it now. The new developments that we're seeing is taking a single family home on with some more town lots, breaking it, putting up a fourplex. That single family used to maybe be 1 or 2 or a long-term rental, and house 6 or 10 people or whatever else. Now most of them are probably babies. What is council? What are planning commission seeing on this? Do we have any thoughts or suggestions?
Yeah, I wanted to talk about this one. So it kind of goes to I guess the core zoning in the UBC. And I think that there's a major disconnect between what the rules are and what the community perceives as Frisco. The people who don't sit at this table or are not in this room. I feel like we're hamstrung a little bit because there's these allays of densification from Main Street, tearing backwards out on Granite, on Galena. And to your point, it's not somebody buying 4 lots, it's somebody buying 1 lot and then putting a 4, 6, or 8-plex on it. And the best that we can do is tell them to trim their use because they're sticking out of the ball playing a small bit, or, you know, their baby might be a little bit ugly, but it's not really changing the densification thing. And, you know, there are people that just, they don't get it. They bought into small town Frisco, they are buying into it. And it's not that I necessarily disagree with the strategy. It would be nice if we continue to enhance the amount of workforce requirements that go with those developments. You know, is it 1 for 3? Is it, I don't know what the magic number is because it's a huge economic problem. You know, obviously developers are always looking at this in terms of their performance and trying to make sure that they maximize profit over retail. But I just think that we have a messaging issue there for town residents, for people that are repeat residents. And then I think we should really consider what are we doing with those moves? Because it's, you know, we're adding more units, but to what?
And then planning commission has a unique problem in that we heard that the council has the goal of at some point being 50% local people. That was some arbitrary number, and that number is probably closer to 20. But every time we approve a project, we know we're approving for people who aren't going to live here full time. But we have no tool at all to stop that. We have no tool to say to somebody who's building a 4-plex or an 8-plex, I'm sorry, you can't build this because it's not going to help our local economy. It's going to be for people from Denver or from Texas who want to own a place there and use it for 2 months out of the year, or a month out of the year, or 2 weeks out of the year.
For sure. So, you know, to that end, I think, and this is kind of where Don's going, is we discussed this. What's that?
I'm not going anywhere.
Oh, we've discussed that as possible workforce housing overlay, right? So we can apply that to each of the areas, but all this, you know, our code is set up to build McMansion. That's it. That's all we get, right? So like for us, and that's where like, this is where how I feel about this evening, talking about short-term rentals and all. It's like, we shouldn't necessarily be putting our finger on those short-term rentals as much as we are compared to, if you're building 4 units, then one of them has to be a 4 unit. Period. And we don't have anything like that.
You don't, or you can put it in place.
So that's where planning commission, like, you know, I mean, you guys know, hold on, let's just clarify what that process. Yeah. Okay. Somebody, please, I'm not a legal one. That's gonna be wrong.
You could.
So there's, and you had 2 topics there. One is the workforce housing overlay, which would allow additional density if it's a workforce housing project. But that's not a requirement. So that could be an option for some people to pursue that. And so staff is working on that. The other concept of, hey, if you're building a property of this name, you have to build some workforce housing unit. That's called inclusionary zoning. It certainly is something that can be done. To this point in time, we have not gotten clear direction from council that we see that, because there's legal implications, there's some other things associated with that, so we have not gone down that way.
So can you just clarify what the legal implications might be? As far as I can see, it's common.
Yeah, I mean, it certainly.
Well, in order to answer the questions.
Yes, if you have 1 unit, you tear it down, you build 4. Is that a good thing or bad? I'm not sure of the conversation, but it's a good thing for the developer. From a town perspective, when we're having this conversation, that's used as the example. Like the developer tore down the cabin and built 4 units. Are we liking that or not? Most often those are sold to people who buy. I'm watching the process. Watching how we've built.
I'm still asking the question. Is it a good thing or a bad?
Okay, well,
That are living there that work here. And that's what's happening, because those buildings that are getting torn down, they're, because they're right for redevelopment, therefore they're old, therefore they were probably housing. So, and now they build 4 huge units that nobody lives in.
And nobody can afford.
Let's
Yeah.
make the assumption that
So it's
it's
mixed.
replacing
I mean,
somebody else.
it's not, well, I mean, yeah, but assumption then.
Has there been talk of doing any analysis? Because I mean, I've only been on planning commission a couple months and I have seen a few of these projects come in where exactly, you know, that old home straight fourplex goes in. Has there been any analysis of who lives there, how those units are moved, if they have short-term licenses, where the assessor data is for that ownership?
It's limited. I mean, certainly we haven't looked at it. An example, is here behind us called the Estates on Galena.
Right.
That was a mobile home behind a local jug for many, many years. Maybe, I think maybe 2 other homes on it, so 3 cabins total. They were all definitely local workforce because they were not suitable for short-term rentals. Or any other purpose. So, but, so there's 13 units that were constructed there, and of those, I believe 12 of them are owned from people that do not live in Summit County, so they have a primary address elsewhere. And I think, last time I looked, there was 3 short-term rental licenses out of those 13. So there's no local residents.
And 116, from the best I can tell, 116 Galena, which is a 3-plex that was built to replace 2 single-family kind of residences that supported locals, is now all remote owners.
Yeah. So, and again, that's a trend that we're seeing, and I don't know that us as staff are surprised by that.
I rode my bike down, I'm sorry, down Second Street or Second Avenue, and you know where Helton's place was. Like this spring, there was like all these Range Rovers up on the bike path. And there was people in like white fur coats and stuff doing a photo shoot, and I was like, oh, I don't like.
They're coming.
No, I'm just like, do I fit in here? Like, and I'm like bikes clanking, I'm like, hey, I'm your neighbor, you know, like.
I mean, I would say to Andy's question, is it a good thing or a bad thing? The question is kind of exactly, because what we're not seeing, and it's a money, it goes to profit. We're not seeing any replicate though. I mean, the workforce housings that we sell are clearly successful because they sell and they sell and they sell. So that's, you know, that's not to say that they're wrong. It's to say that there isn't an incentive, profit, so density, a parking way to do it, to encourage money, the market to build rental houses. And that's where we had no power, like Robert said. I had to go home to my wife. And she said, what'd you do? I said, we did the same damn thing. We knocked the house down and we put up a fourplex. And she's like, oh, you know, what are you doing? I said, we don't have the tools. And the tools are gonna come down to incentivizing, it's money, it's density, it's rentals. That is what the town needs. And then we wouldn't be caring if somebody from Texas owned 3 units. Because we're trying to help our community, that's rentals. And that's where we have fallen short. I don't know how to fix it. Right, we can't build our way out of that. I agree. We're limited on property and space here. So like the town can't afford to do that all ourselves. Right, and I certainly don't, I'm not saying the town should be built. Right, builders are builders and managers are managers. And the town has, we have the secret weapon called zone. We could do sunset zone. We could do, you know, we could do a lot of creative things on a short term. We don't have to make a permanent density change to our code. I mean, we could say, you know, here it is. We're gonna do it for a year. We're gonna do it for 2 years. Let's see what it's the fan.
We have not taken a project in the time that I've been on planning commission, where we have built a project where I believe that locals are going to be able to benefit. Yes, we just approved the project where there's going to be a couple of workforce housing units. We've approved a couple of other projects where there might be 1 or 2, but we haven't done anything. We have approved more 3-plexes and 4-plexes that we know in our heart. And you can ask the question in the meeting. And based on the answer you get, you know that they're not meant for individuals. I mean, one of the great examples is what's going on in what might be going on someday in, out the base camp, Alpine Inn,
Yeah.
where they want to build a whole bunch of units and find a way around our code to build a whole bunch of units so that they can sell them to people from Denver. And it's a prime location for some workforce housing, and when we raised up the issue of workforce housing, based on their original plan, they came back to us with some interesting twist of our code and said, well, we don't think we'll do that. We think we'll go condotel. Well, we think we'll do a condotel because condotels is somehow in your code. And we don't have to do anything for the local people.
Yeah, so I just want to raise, I don't know if it's a good thing or it's a bad thing, it's a ratio thing. And in my mind, it's not really complex math to take real estate data, right? Sales over the last 24 months, look at the curve of real estate purchases and sales and analyze, for instance, if you build a new unit that's X feet, every realtor in town knows how much every single square foot costs. It's not like rocket science, right? So you take that, you figure it out, you back it in, and then you say, okay, well, what if I took 25% of that and I reduced the purchase price of that to whatever we deem as a median income for a workforce housing or somehow rental appropriate. You could look at it either from a purchase point of view, AKA Peak One or some of the other neighborhoods, or you can look at it from a rental point of view. And try and figure out what that math looks like to say, is this a reasonable burden that you could place on a realtor, or sorry, on a developer? I think what's actually gonna happen is, number one, it's absolutely possible. Number two, it will lower their profit margins. Number three, what's really interesting is that people who are the classic developers that we see kind of all the time, they're gonna go somewhere else maybe. But people that are actually trying to get a foothold in the market, which is actually really good for a business in the county, are gonna be able to take a swipe at it because maybe they can work with a different set of math. Like they're not shooting for the moon on a total profit goal. So I think that it would just be a really interesting social experiment. Even just like to your point about sunset or sunrise or whatever we want to call that, but like, do we do something like, okay, the next couple of projects that come up, or we find a way for something that's not already bought, or we can look at properties that are out there and see who wants to be interested in it with those metrics. I mean, it's crazy, but
No. First, I want to tell you something, fell out of your pocket.
I did important stuff out of it.
So, and I'm sorry, I'm just gonna go, because we were talking about the inclusionary thing before, and if I remember correctly, you know, you told us that there were like lawsuit issues with. Things like that. When I presented in this year, this is. That brought up that there are some legal issues that could come up with. Because basically, like the same thing about the property, no way from the property. Yeah. So that is not.
At the same time, yeah.
In Colorado, that they're going before.
It's, I think,
I mean, it is possible in the state.
I think that's concern is it opens us up potentially to having to defend ourselves. Certainly it is very legal. We can do this. Concept of takings is actually when you're taking away most of the value. That's not a taking. I disagree.
Yeah. I just want to say that, like, I feel like we talk a lot about incentives, and I think that's great. But I think we're at a point in this town where we can begin to fire stuff. I mean, this place is blown up, and we can go beyond it, I think.
This is also where I think council for a very long time has been thank you to any potential legal action ever, right? And I think, you know, Sam, you'll probably agree that you tell planning commission that there are a number of things that we want or can't do because of potential legal outcomes. And so that's where it's like, partially we have to make some bold moves. right? We have to say, we're gonna look that in the face and say, let's do it, bring it on. You know, and because what's gonna actually change otherwise? And so like now I'm leaning towards inclusionary zoning because, you know, it all depends on how it gets described. And then, so if I could, you know, we made a committee to meet with developers before it goes to sketch plan, right? To try to get more workforce housing than they're forced to do, or they would get normally out of, you know, the regular bonuses, right? And so, you know, number one, it's completely priced out at this point. I mean, that's just the bottom line. There's like no way that the economy is going anywhere near being in line, right? And so, you know, they can't build for anything less than 160% AMI just to even build. Like, and that's not profit based. That's like getting it out of the ground and having it there, right? And so then, you know, developers are greed based, except for some. You know, we're gonna have Chevy across the street who has 400 some odd employees, and he's like, my employees are gonna kill me if we don't get some workforce housing in here, you know. And so that's why we made the changes we recently did, you know, cap and whatnot. He's gonna give us 6 more units, but that doesn't go towards the demographic that need the most, which is a workforce rental class, right? And who we lost during the pandemic because we sent them home, we kicked them out, right? And now they're just gone. And so at this point, you know, why are they coming back? They can't afford to be back here. So like, why should they come back? You know, and so like, this is all part of the conversation. And I, you know, I don't know that there's no answer. I mean, anything we do, I believe, will make a difference, right? You get one family into a house, then you've done something, right? That doesn't necessarily equate to, you know, a whole community. You know, but look at Aspen, right? Aspen so runs. Aspen didn't shut down because nobody wanted to there, right? I mean, like, yeah, people live in Carbondale, and they might even live in Brandenburg in Cleveland Springs, you know, which all of that, and that's not community and everything else, but the bottom line is it's not gonna die. Everybody comes to it for a world-class ski resorts. We just happen to be a small town amongst the world-class ski resorts that is trying to deal and operate. Nothing, I believe, will ever die. People will always be here.
I do believe it does.
But it's like, who's gonna be here?
Well, it might not be people that we want to be with, you know, and it might not be people that, you know, our community, and it might not be the people that we all grew up with, which is.
Both Chinese proverbs. If you continue down the same road, at the same speed, in the same direction, and expect to end up at a different place, more likely crazy.
Right, but so nobody's expecting.
But we're walking down the same road, at the same speed, in the same direction. And how many workforce housing units have we built in the last 6 years, short of CDOT?
Well, I mean, there's been a few, and we've got other programs such as Housing Helps that we are doing in order to try to accomplish some of those goals.
But
Your
it's
point is very well taken,
pretty-
and I will point out too that town council really has recognized that. If you saw the first part of the last work session item before this, there was a big discussion about changes for community character resulting from one party goes in short-term rental and base moves in order to make some changes on it. So I think there is a recognition there. And maybe this is another good segue. So that's a code change. So upcoming code changes that we might work on. Jesse, any thoughts?
Using parking as an incentive to lower the cost of workforce housing. So instead of having to park every unit to every bedroom, or sorry, thank you, every bedroom at X number of parking spots, they're expensive. And they take up space, they take up valuable space for density. And when you're building, you know, a community where you're trying to get people to utilize transit and people can walk to businesses and, you know, and be connected from a mobility perspective, you know, we have to not build a community for the car. And I think that there's a really, really good financial piece to allowing developers to mix and match their pro forma in order to reach affordable housing goals by being flexible enough to eliminate some.
I would say one thing though, to make sure that everybody's going to have it. You
Yeah.
can get rid of the third. and
Yeah, no, I'm not, yeah, no, it's like, yeah, I mean, there's different tech, you know, whether it's setting a minimum requirement or eliminating maximum requirement or allowing, you know, a menu of options to let the developer pick and choose instead of being really prescriptive, but.
Speaking of menu, did we all have the same conversation recently where we talked about these new bonus unit rules? Has everybody in this room separately just had that
So, yeah,
conversation? Can we just?
and to update, so the planning commission at their last meeting, step back a little bit, town council gave direction to staff to draft a code amendment on density bonus regulations. Danelle presented that to the planning commission at their last meeting last Thursday night. Planning commission came back and recommended approval of that with some modifications. And maybe any planning commissioners want to jump in, but to summarize what those changes were and why. But ultimately, please jump in and elaborate, but.
So you haven't talked to the council about those?
Not yet. Not yet.
So there's two extra density bonus, like a third and a fourth option. And there's the third one is you can provide 100% of your units, currently around 100% of your units can be
Oh, sorry.
no, bonus, extra bonus density, but they all have to be deed restricted light. So in other words, the only restriction is that the person work in the county 30 hours a week on average. So the other restrictions as to like AMI, maximum, or appreciation, we're taking off the table. So the planning commission voted to recommend that we not let that go all the way, that we still think that the tool can be effective if we cap it at 160% AMI, which is what you guys have heard from developers, my work, is what we've heard also in Silicon. And we recommended an appreciation cap of 3% for that one of the four options.
So there was a modification from what was initially discussed at town council back in July. Oh, just we're related to LIHTC units, and adding opportunity for LIHTC, because right now, the occupancy provision in LIHTC will not allow for.
And that had to do with definition, because the way that they have defined affordable housing versus workforce housing, it would have opened up the LIHTC provision to all the other options, and we wanted to make sure that's not true.
I think the main comment was, we've talked and we've heard a lot about the different market rate or the AMI levels that we've tried to hit, and we've forced everybody to hit it 100% if they want these bonus units. But we keep hearing that there's a dearth of 160, 170, 180. And I know personally people who would qualify for that but can't find a home in the county. And they're dying to find a home in the county. And so we thought if you remove that AMI restriction altogether, then you're really not, yes, the person wouldn't necessarily live in the county, but not necessarily limiting them and keeping that unit affordable or more attainable, I guess. Affordable was the word that's kept.
And that was the other thing.
But if we kind of, I think what we suggested was that it would be an average of 160, and that's a flexible number. If the council felt like that should be a different number, 170, 180, wherever that number would be, that the average of those bonus units would meet that. Then we really are serving this very specific, an underserved part of the community that's not really taken care of right now. So that's why we recommended maybe putting an AMI.
And the third change was recommended was going back to a 1 mile radius.
Right.
Instead of the 10 mile radius.
Well, no, also control
that we believe that exporting our problems to other towns is not really an appropriate thing to do.
Well, and also all that does is basically include Copper Mountain. And Copper Mountain, I mean, from a walkability perspective. It's not- Yeah, but like, it's easier in some ways to get to Dillon than it is to get to Copper if you're walking your bike, right? So if you're doing the radius based on walkability and how you need it to get there. I don't know, somebody made that argument. That's a good point. Yeah. You guys, I think there were problems. Yeah.
operating benefit come in.
There you go.
So I think, the next time, maybe this is a good question for council is, do you want to see this again in work session based on the planning commission's recommendation, which is different than the last time council saw it, or can we just draft an ordinance based upon?
My view is I don't like these things for the first time. That we're at a first reading. I like the opportunity to hash out like we did tonight. That's fine.
Then we will.
But others, and against 6 others. Or 5.
I agree, 'cause I'm trying to think back to the discussion and then in light of what you guys just said, I need to reconcile those two things and I'm not sure. Yeah. And just being able to see it like really.
The reason I brought it up as kind of that segment was because if we're talking about implementing some sort of sunset zoning, we could maybe start to look at those options as, you know, which of those makes the most sense to maybe if you were to build a fourplex, you're required, maybe it's not 100% AMI that we're required. Some of these slightly less restrictive options for what we now call bonus units, we said some percentage of your regular project, your fourplex had to be maybe one of those levels, not necessarily, but maybe one set. Or gave people the option and said, that would give us more. Right, yeah, right, and it makes it so that I love the option of giving the developer that choice. So it's not like, oh, you want bonus units, here's what you do. Like, oh, you can give this way, you can give this way. I think we still need to highlight exactly what we're giving up for what we're getting. We need to figure out what that is. Figuring that out, but also letting the developer have some options. Maybe this works for one developer, but this option is for this.
But one of those tools could be.
Absolutely, but it could be inclusionary zoning as Andy's describing with a higher AMI cap rather than 100%.
Or that it's an option, you get to pick one of these same 4 options that we're giving bonus unit folks. And if we write those in such a way that we are still getting something out of them, and we like any option, you know, I think what we decided at planning commission was the option A that was left over, nobody would ever pick because of the way it was kind of worded and the other options there. And to me, if there's one that nobody's ever going to pick, then that means our balance is off. And we need to find that balance so that each option works for some people. But if we find those options and we like them, then we could offer that as part of the zoning.
And how do we incentivize rent?
Well, that's that 4th option, right? The lights out.
Go to Iris.
Yeah, so, you know, sometimes, or more than sometimes, we'll see these fourplexes, if you will. And you can look right through it, and you can see a lock-off. You know that there's a lock-off being built there. It's not called a lock-off, but in this session, I'm gonna call it a lock-off. So why don't we make that lock-off an ADU? Why don't we make, you know, everybody knows STR. Let's talk about LTR. We'll give you a lock, we'll give you an LDR, we'll give you a long-term rental. We'll give you an LTR right there. And then our great developers will have no problem creating a lockup. And then your Texas person can solve a little bit of the problem because he's got an LTR. You know, that's great.
So, and maybe this, yeah.
And then you don't have to park it, yeah.
Quick comment. So Ira brings up a good point of a challenge in our code. Right now, our code incentivizes a lockup, which can be short-term rented, not required to be long-term rented, and disincentivizes an ADU, which is for the local workforce to be able to.
Yeah.
That is a problem in our code.
Okay.
So
So those are my 2, I call WOFO is workforce housing. And LTRs are long-term rentals. And I think we put them in the code.
And not that these come out for all the time.
Yeah.
And condo towns need to come out of our.
Out.
It needs to come out of our code, and if there were any way for us to incentivize that base camp development to do rental units there instead of doing what they're talking about doing.
We've been talking to the developer.
It would be so beneficial to the town.
It's like you're at the candy store looking in the window, jobs, bus you.
Sweet.
So this is off the record.
So, couple things on that, and rentals real quick. The town, I think the town has taken it upon ourselves. We've recognized the town did a lot for sale, the for sale component of workforce housing, the peak one and some other things. Private developers, that maybe is their niche and their role. The town, we've got at this point 22 units under development at Granite Park. Our next project that we're going to be really focusing on is the Colorado Workforce Center. It's where that building is in Association Galena. That's probably going to be 30 to 40 rental units, and we're all going to have those on the lower AMI spectrum. So we're lacking probably tools to really encourage developers to do that, other than potentially ADUs or lockups. And we do have some really strong tools, and it's some funding in order to make the rental portion happen.
And what would be enough? That's obviously not enough, but it's something. But what's
Right.
better than zero? And one at 30 or 40 units is better than none, right? Right. And so, that's like we've done something.
Yeah, and what will be the CDOT split on that 22?
It's 11 for us, 11 for Scott.
So I would just encourage it, if I understood the process right, actually it's a council decision to pursue modifications to the code or recommendations thereof, like for this discussion. right?
Correct. So generally what we do is if we have some feedback from council, which we've got, we can go ahead and start working on drafting some code language. Then we would take it back to the town council for a work session. Council would then direct staff to draft that into code language, take it to the planning commission for a planning commission recommendation. Then if there's no changes, then it can go back to town council either for a work session or for a first reading on it. So that, and that process, that the time is for sure.
I mean, it's not like stack, but I would just think, I would make sure that we're thinking about ratios. I would make sure that we're thinking about ratios. But we talked a lot about the four bars, right? But there's 6 bars, and there's 8, there's 20. So it's like, what is the right margin? How?
I have hopefully this won't be very long, but I did want to talk to you guys about when the planning commission members were reappointed back in April. There was 4 of us that were reappointed. 3 of us got reappointed and 1 didn't. And I'll actually go backwards for a minute and say Jessica Potter is a personal friend of mine. There's nothing against her, but Don was. He didn't know that I didn't also personal. Anyway, where was I going with this? Okay, so Donna at our first meeting after 3 of us were reappointed came to the planning commission meeting and she cried. And I felt really bad for Donna because I think she was not just hurt, but also insulted. I think there was a little bit of an insult, professional insult to what happened. And so the reason I'm saying all this is I would like to advocate for term limits for the planning commission because I think we've gotten to a point where a lot of people want to be on the planning commission. Clearly, you guys are wanting, some changeover. And so whatever that number is, 3 terms or, 12 years or whatever. So that people after they volunteered for 14 years don't feel like they got taken off the planning commission for no reason. And then feel insulted and really hurt. So.
That's fair.
Yeah.
And as the one who interviewed her and everyone, and you guys should also know, like, this right here, this conversation is why we have this. And unfortunately, no bad to Donna if I any reason. And, I have a personal relationship with her as well. And, that is continued, so. The main thing is that this conversation, kind of bottom line, Donna basically said, the code is good, we don't need any revisions. You guys said, oh, yeah, there's all kinds of things we can do for workforce housing. Right? This is what we're working on. This is what's important right now. That's why we went that way. It's just,
yeah.
There's nothing else that I can't. There's only so many seats, and we thought it was very important to have the people that can help us through this next step.
Just. This is not a public forum conversation.
Sure.
The term of the question is.
Yeah.
Your conversation, but.
I like to.
Yeah, I think Sherman is, I mean, I remember a time when we couldn't get people on principal planning commission, no one wanted to be on it, so I get why there was no term limits before. But we're not there anymore, like now, how many people apply? Now, so if it's a 14, we're going up. That's a lot. So people want to be part of the organization and that's great. And yes, it's fun, especially.
Oh, absolutely, and that's on my list to do sometime before April 20.
Is that what our?
I don't know, it's the next one, those ones are the town council.
So I know we're running out of time, but I just wanted to go back to code amendments. I'm pretty sure that each one of the schools has a few bailiwicks that they would hang out on and say, I think you gotta change this, that, or the other thing. I feel like it would be constructive. We need to publish that back to you, but for us to make a list of things that we think are problematic and that could use addressing. Because I definitely have my list, and I look around with it, I'm pretty sure. So whatever the best process, I mean, you guys, there's communications with other commissioners that we can't have outside of the room. Tell us the best way to do that.
Yeah, I mean, frankly, the best way is if you have a code section this, when you look at this, or even if it's not a code section, say, hey, on this, I'm really questioning this particular item, send it to Susan. Oh.
I would like to work session, it would just be better.
We can definitely have.
I want to hear what everybody else is saying, I don't want to just read.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, I do it more, but I know your schedule is busy with council. It's really important. I've been on 5 or 6 years. And this is the first time that I've met with council. I was looking around and trying to figure out who was at the last one.
Yeah, you were in the chair, but yeah, there was a lot of new faces.
So we have apparently 1 minute left, so we can wrap up. A very good idea, and certainly we'll see if we can get that. And our new town manager starts tomorrow.
Nice.
Here that we are trying to all row in the same direction. Meetings very easily could have diverged into, like this kind of thing. But you guys are practitioners. You live in the code. You see it a lot more than we do. And so I really appreciate the feedback, and I love the idea of the work session and look forward to what you guys come up with. But it is helpful to reiterate that we are all, no one has majorly divergent views here, and that's really reached.
Well, as a planning commission, I also think it's helpful for us to get a little sense of where the council stands.
Yeah.
Because it's good for us to know when you're standing behind us and when. And then also as you are, making decisions on things we're not necessarily experts on. And you guys are an appointed panel of experts. And it seems like we never even hear them talk. You've already got on. Thank you.
Thank you all.
Thanks, guys. Great. Yes, that's you.
If I just start getting ready to be five and posted now.
We are unmuted and rolling.
Okay, welcome. Welcome to the council meeting. As a reminder, to those who have just tuned in, Mayor Mortensen is out of town. Mayor Pro Tem is virtual. All right, we open the meeting with, we don't do roll call, right?
No, we did roll call at the beginning of the meeting.
So we will open the meeting for public comment. Citizens making public comments during public comment or public hearing should state their name and address for the record, be topic specific, and limit comments to no longer than 3 minutes, please. No council action is taken on public comments. Council will take all comments under advisement, and if a council response is appropriate, the individual making the comment will receive a formal response from the town at a later date. So at this point, we'll open the floor if there's anybody in the room that would like to make a comment.
Go online first, but I am going to make a public.
David, why don't you go ahead and go since you're here?
Rolling, 1, 2, 3 Rose Crown Circle. The topic I'm going to talk about is STR. Shock. We have that earlier today. It was striking to me that the entire conversation was strictly economic. There were a few who commented about the community, sense of community and impact on the community, but it was predominantly economic. And I've experienced living near an STR that's well out of control. Pig roasts in the backyard, up all night, and because they're on vacation. So I'm not faulting them. We go on vacation, we all want to have fun, but when the vacation place is next to my residence without air conditioning and the windows are open, all of a sudden I become a party house by implication. So it's, for me, it's about bad actors, because good STR renters are not an issue. If they're courteous, they pick up for themselves and all of that. No one complains about that. That isn't a problem. And it struck me that through all the conversations and all the reports, nothing about enforcement, a 2-strike policy, you lose your license, which would get STR homeowners, property owners that are STRing focused on getting the right renters, and the renters are appropriately educated and aware of the community and the policies. So for me, that needs to be discussed a lot more, because you weed out bad actors and the issue of quantity goes away. Quantity, the increased quantity creates the opportunity for more bad actors. So there's a direct correlation, there as well. I believe start small, because you can always increase it. It was discussed. If you start large and then try to reduce it because it has an overt negative impact on the community, that's really, really hard and takes years for the attrition of those licenses to get them out. So you're better off going where the market has floated right now. So I know there's been discussion around, well, it should be higher and higher. There's no reason you guys can't have an ordinance or discussion and raise it in the future. The market has set what that level is, just below 22% already. Because if it was more, they would already have had them, because there's no restriction. So there's that. It was bothersome that you instructed staff to get input from stakeholders, and residents were not considered part of the stakeholder community. It is unconscionable that the people that elected you in are not considered stakeholders on this issue. And then the last thing I'll close with is all the policies and everything say, if there's an issue, report it to the STR hotline, except that the city won't give out the addresses of STR. So I don't know if the one's causing the problem is an STR or not, even though it's a business license that the town has issued. With that, thank you.
Anybody else present? Deborah, do you have people online?
There is one hand raised. It's Gavin. Would you like to unmute yourself and turn on your camera?
I would. Hi there.
Hi.
I guess I can put my hand down too now. Hello, everyone. My name is Gavin Dalglish, and I reside at 24 Thunderhead Road on Peak 7 and in Montauk, New York, where I am now. I am the marketing director for Summit Mountain Rentals, and I also worked with Danelle Cook with the town of Frisco to compile the market analysis found in today's work session packet. I am here today to ask that we collect vacation rental license stats and analyze monthly instead of passing a vacation rental cap. Monitoring monthly provides enough time to respond if needed, but avoids the potential of unintended consequences worsening current economic demand. In my line of work, no 2 years are ever the same. Holiday dates change, as do school breaks, weather patterns, and macroeconomics. Supply changes and demand changes. Compiling data helps identify changes day to day, month to month, and year to year. Let me reiterate the data collected and interpreted by Destimetrics for Frisco and the surrounding I-70 corridor. December occupancy on the books is pacing 60% down from last year. Last month, that number was 52% down, so the difference is growing. Fewer travelers have made their Frisco December reservation by over half. It's a big drop in 1 year. No 2 years are ever the same, and this winter is not shaping up to be like last. The market has changed, and changes by the town and this council have already been put into place that have made an impact. Frisco has achieved greater vacation rental license compliance, flushed out a bit of the boom of license applications stemming from the fear of losing the opportunity to rent, which will surely increase again with this news that you were discussing in the work session. And we will quickly go over, in my estimate, that 22% and have a waiting line. And it is capable of collecting incredible data that will be very helpful. I ask that we monitor license counts and percentage of housing stock and discuss this monthly. Having this information will help us achieve the right balance and avoid unintended consequences of unnecessary action. I understand the council's plea to do something. Regular monitoring and discussion allows us to take stock and make informed decisions. Constant change in policy prevents us from measuring the impact that we have already done. I welcome any questions, and I'm here to weigh in and share my market knowledge and expertise. Thank you guys very much for your consideration.
I don't see anybody else with a raised hand.
At this point, mayor and council comments, so we'll just call it council comments.
Well, I don't know. I just feel it's kind of funny just when we get the work experience. There's statistics for just food costs, people that are, I don't know, their statistics are so very different than when we hear from other groups of people. I guess I was thinking that one.
Thank you. Tomorrow is Diane's last day in that seat, so she can go back to the seat that she prefers. I think. I don't think I'm talking out of school to say that you're full-time. Well, thank you.
Thank you.
You came in quickly. You handled the situation extremely well.
Again.
The wheels are still on. We talked this morning. The wheels are still on the bus. And that's and more. So I just appreciate you stepping forward when you did have the opportunity to say no, thank you. You didn't, and because of that, we are all better. Anything? Staff updates? Anything?
No further updates, thank you.
Consent agenda?
May I say something before we agenda the online folks?
Is this public comment?
Yes, it was. I'm online, didn't have a chance to raise my hand.
I think I'd rather be flexible than shut somebody out. So yeah, please go ahead and take your 3 minutes or.
Oh, sure. Christopher Warren, 92 Shoshone Lane, Frisco. So right now, there are a number of townhomes, condos under construction. Many of them went under contract over a year ago. And so in other towns, I believe the county has done the same thing too, is that those homes that had broken ground were grandfathered in. And you guys touched, and thank you for the great, the memo, all the work you guys have been doing. It's really the most cohesive that anyone's done. But I don't know that this has been fully addressed. If you have a cap of 800 units and someone is literally closing in the next, getting a CO in the next couple of weeks, what happens if there's no permits in a couple of weeks from now? And they've been under construction for 13 months with the intention of using the place as an SDR.
I don't want to leave you hanging at that. Was that your, in the world of council comment or public comment, we're happy to hear the issue, but we don't engage in a dialogue for it. So I appreciate you raising the issue. I didn't know if you had more.
No, just to complete it just seems that we might be missing that to be fleshed out completely to emulate what the other towns have done, which is to make sure that the people who are under construction with new construction that they bought with the understanding that they get an STR permit. They're operating in a place of goodwill and they've been grandfathered in and I didn't hear anything like that with Frisco. So I just want to pass that on and thank you.
Consent agenda?
I was thinking of what to call you. Stand-in Mayor Pro Tem,
Pro Tem.
Mr. Councilmember Aronson. I move that we approve the consent agenda.
Second. Call the roll, please.
Certainly. Mortensen, absent. Aronson,
Yes.
Burley,
Yes.
Held, Incan.
Yes.
Thank you. Helenko,
Yes.
Scripsack, Adrian. Thank you.
Next, new business, agenda item number 1, resolution 22-28, a resolution expressing the intent of the town to be reimbursed for certain capital expenditures associated with the financing of a workforce housing project. Hello.
Oh, good evening, council. So this resolution before you, if approved, would authorize the town to reimburse itself in the event we were to finance the Galena Street housing project, which of course has not yet been discussed or decided, except that we are in negotiations with the state to purchase the land. So this would allow us to incorporate that into the financing if we wish to do so at a future date, along with any other expenses that we would spend in the future.
Basically, this is giving you authority to continue the process, but we haven't made a firm commitment.
Correct. And it does not obligate you to anything moving forward either.
Comments, questions? Entertain a motion?
Public comment.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Thank you.
Any public comment on the question? Hearing none, I would entertain a motion.
Mr. Aronson, I move that we approve resolution 22-28.
Heard the motion. Motion in a second. Let it by the question.
Aronson,
Yes.
Burley,
Yes.
Held,
Yes.
Incan,
Yes.
Helenko,
Yes.
Scripsack, Adrian. Mortensen, absent. Thank you.
Agenda item number 2, first reading ordinance 2209, an ordinance amending the 2022 annual budget by revising certain revenues and appropriations and appropriating additional sums of money in the capital improvement fund and the FCHA 5A fund.
This is going to be the quickest meeting we've done in a moment, perhaps.
the last two meetings and I'm not going to take it personally.
So this ordinance, if passed, would add some appropriations as well as some revenue to offset those appropriations to the 2022 budget of the town of Frisco within the capital fund, also within the housing fund. These should all be items that you're familiar with that have previously been discussed with council. Many of them are items that are actually being carried over from the 2021 budget for projects that were not completed. And I'm happy to answer any questions if there is anything in here that you had a question about in the list of the appropriations.
Council? Public comment? Seeing and hearing none? Okay.
Mr. Aronson, I move that we approve on first reading ordinance 22-09.
Second.
Having heard the motion in a second?
I'll call the question.
Certainly. Thurley,
Yes.
Held,
Yes.
Incan,
Yes.
Malenko,
Yes.
Scripset, Adrian,
Yes.
Mortensen, absent, Aronson.
Yes.
Thank you.
Completes our agenda. I would entertain. You are adjourned.
Night,
Symbolic purposes only.
Nice work.
I was prepared for some much tougher questions.
Dan Fallon's not here to question you about the budget, so.
I got my two target appropriate.